Hello, good morning. It is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
The Home Secretary faces a rebellion from her own MPs over her asylum reforms, but gains support from Reform's Nigel Farage.
He's making mischief, so I'm not going to let him live rent-free in my head. And just because he said something doesn't mean to say that I have to respond to it.
Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza is approved by the United Nations.
An end to ticket touting. The government's expected to ban the resale of concert and sports tickets for profit.
Also today, how can you save enough to retire by 35? We'll be talking personal finance with a couple who've done just that. And London's favourite singleton is immortalised in Leicester Square. A statue of Bridget Jones in bronze is unveiled. A very good morning to you and welcome to the programme. The Home Secretary is waking up to a backlash from some of her own MPs who've called her new asylum reforms cruel and inhumane.
In a passionate speech in Parliament, Shabana Mahmood laid out radical plans to fix what she's called a broken system of asylum. And it was a moment of raw anger for the Home Secretary, who recounted the racist abuse she suffered herself. Her announcement was welcomed by the Reform leader Nigel Farage, to whom she had a pretty blunt message: sod off.
I have to say to the honourable gentleman, I wish I had the privilege of walking around this country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and asylum system is creating across this country. Unlike him, unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a and told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country.
Well, let's chat to Rob Powell, who's here for us. I mean, it's been an almighty row, hasn't it? But I wonder how much the Home Secretary would welcome that.
Yeah, I think you get the sense that part of the point of this is that she sort of almost wants to have an argument because she wants to convince people to her way of thinking. In terms of how big the rebellion will be and how sort of many people might jump into this, I think when you're comparing it to previous rebellions that have led to pretty crushing U-turns for the government, things like welfare, winter fuel, as it stands, it doesn't necessarily feel that it's reaching right through those parts of the party that it did with those issues. That said, it wasn't just the sort of traditional left-wing suspects that you had criticising this yesterday. There were more moderate figures as well. I think the difference is, though, that they are prepared to have this argument. It's not a case of just, oh, please just come with us. It's a case of, no, this is our position. You need to listen. And, you know, the case being made by those around Shabana Mahmood is people have promised to do something about this. Governments have promised for years. We don't do it now. You're not going to like the people that come in afterwards to deal with it.
Well, let's listen to what she had to say to Beth late last night.
I'm not really interested in anything that Nigel Farage has to say. I think that there are various individuals who at the moment are seeking to make mischief, and I'm not interested because I really mean it when I say I haven't had anything about other political parties and other politicians in my mind. I have a solemn responsibility as the Home Secretary of this country who can see a broken asylum system. It is my job to fix it. I know people are angry about this broken asylum system, and I know that it is fueling division across our country. So it's my job to put that system to right, to reform it and to unite our country.
He said you'd be welcome to join Reform with these sorts of asylum.
Honestly, Nigel Farage can sod off. I'm not interested in anything he's got to say.
No, but really, you've spoken to me about him before, about how you think some of his policies are dog whistle politics.
Well,
how does it make you feel when he thinks you're aligning with him?
Because he's making mischief, so I'm not going to let him live rent-free in my head. And just because he said something doesn't mean to say that I have to respond to it just because he's making mischief.
Tommy Robinson endorsed your plan.
Well, I'll deal with that in just one moment. But the Reform Party currently has a policy to rip up indefinite leave to remain of those who have been long-term settled in our country. That is immoral, it's deeply shameful, and it is the wrong policy.
When she goes out there and she makes the argument, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Whether you agree with it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. You get the sense that there's maybe three bits of this that MPs are most concerned about. The first is sort of the core of the policy, actually, because it's a massive change. Usually, if you get asylum status, well, then that's quite a permanent thing. You get it for years. This is shifting it to a more temporary, it's going to be reviewed every 2.5 years basis. And I think there's a worry about people being left in limbo there. The other two is, in that document yesterday, it talked about looking at trying to deport families, essentially. It said at the moment they don't prioritise family deportations, but they were basically saying the people that are here, families that are here, don't have a right to claim asylum, that they will look to offer financial incentives at first, but if that doesn't work and people don't go then, they'll look at enforced removals. I think that's quite uncomfortable for a lot of Labour MPs. But then when you hear Shabana Mahmood and those around her make the argument, they say, on that in particular, there are 700 families from Albania here. Albania is a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights. It's a safe country. They're in taxpayer-funded accommodation. They say, look, is it fair that they're here being paid for to stay here?
It's really, so we've obviously talked a bit about the reaction from the left and the Liberal Democrats. It's interesting as well, obviously, Nigel Farage expressing sort of tacit support, Kemi Badenoch saying the same, saying I've offered her the support of my party to get these sensible measures through. Both Farage and Badenoch, they're kind of adding quite a few caveats saying we think you should go further and you're going to have to leave the ECHR eventually. What's really interesting to me on this is if and when these measures come before the Conservatives in Reform, if they don't vote in favour of them, they'll have to carry some responsibility in the years to come if the numbers don't improve. And in that sense, we're focusing on the reaction from her own party this morning. It's kind of laying down the gauntlet to the Tories in Reform as well at the same time.
Yeah, I went to a Reform press conference with Richard Tice yesterday and he was sort of asked quite a lot about this migration question, whether you're going to vote for it. And he sort of said, well, we wish the Home Secretary well, and was pretty vague about whether they would actually vote for it or not. I think Reform and the Tories sort of being quite sympathetic towards this doesn't necessarily help the case with convincing Labour MPs, though. And it also doesn't help the case that when you're looking at where Labour is losing support electorally, there's a lot of, obviously, focus on Labour voters going to Reform, but there's quite a lot of evidence to show that even more voters are leaving Labour for other left-wing parties, the Lib Dems, the Greens, Jeremy Corbyn-led independent parties, people like that. So if you've got Nigel Farage sort of saying, we quite like this sort of stuff, that's not going to help with some of those voters that are thinking, golly, is this really a Labour government?
Yeah, really interesting. Well, we're going to be talking to the government, to the Tories and to Reform throughout the programme. Also to David Miliband to get his view as well, which will be interesting. Rob, great stuff, as always. Thank you. A little bit of breaking news that's just crossed from the CMA. That's the Competition and Markets Authority. They've opened investigations into 8 businesses across various sectors, and they've issued advisory letters to 100 firms. Just to reference, this comes off the back of the 2024 Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act. It gave the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority, slightly new and wider powers. And they're opening investigations into StubHub, Viagogo. We might be talking about ticket companies again a little bit later. Had a little bit of a row, didn't we, this morning on Cheat Sheet. Also, the AA Driving School, BSM Driving School, Gold's Gym, Wayfair, Appliance Direct and Marks Electricals. These are the first launched cases using that new consumer protection powers from that 2024 Act that we mentioned. We're going to be talking to the CMA later in the programme to get a little bit more details on this and those 8 companies that we just listed that they're looking into.
Interesting. Does look like a bit of kind of change in approach on that. Now, the UN Security Council has voted in favour of President Trump's plan to send an international stabilisation force to Gaza. Excuse me.
No worries, let me pick up for you there. The resolution was backed by 13 countries, with Russia and China abstaining. Well, our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons is with us this morning. Adam, it's interesting this. Were we expecting this to pass? I guess we were, but it's still quite a sea change in terms of when you look at who supported it, pretty widely supported, to when these plans were first announced and the kind of reaction to them back then.
Yeah, it really is an important moment, this. It legitimises that 20-point plan, and I think it gives the United States a feeling that it can then go through with this and really take control. You're absolutely right that when this was first talked about, there were questions about whether this resolution would be approved. Certainly, this 13 in favour, 2 abstentions, none against. It does feel like a ringing endorsement. How did it pick up favour? Well, it was amended quite late on at the behest of certainly some Arab states and also members of the Security Council itself, who said that what they wanted was a reference to a path towards Palestinian self-determination and statehood, and that is now in there. What is interesting is that the two main protagonists in that war, Hamas and Israel, have both come out of this with a certain sort of shrug of the shoulders. We know that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu opposes Palestinian statehood. He's going to try and put anything in the path of achieving that. And Hamas has condemned this resolution, effectively saying that Gaza should be controlled by Palestinians, and that the Board of Peace that is being created under this resolution is not wanted by them, that this is outsiders who will be given political and military control inside Gaza. Remember, one of the things that this resolution supports is the disarming of Hamas. And so Hamas is saying, well, we're in a situation now where outsiders, where foreign military forces will be brought in to try and disarm, in their words, the resistance. So I think they are raising the spectre of further conflict. The Americans, on the other hand, will be delighted because they want to take control of the future of Gaza, and to an extent, that is exactly what they've got.
Adam, thank you very much. Adam Parsons there for us. Now, reselling tickets for live events like concerts or sports matches for any sort of profit is expected to be banned by the government.
The move comes a week after artists such as Dua Lipa and Coldplay urged Sir Keir Starmer to protect fans from exploitation. We
have had a little bit of info from Number 10 just this morning as well, which is interesting, saying the government's fully committed to clamping down on ticket touts, saying that they've carefully considered the evidence provided. They won't preempt that here, but we're committed to new consumer protections. Now, that means they're going to do it, basically, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and Sadia's here to tell us a bit more about what we can expect. So we don't have the legislation in front of us yet, but we were talking about this hypothetically last week. It's clearly on its way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we understand, an announcement due tomorrow. And essentially what it means is that reselling a ticket at a price higher than what you've purchased it from the original box office will be banned. So this will apply to people like me and you and everyone at home who buys a ticket and maybe decides they don't want to go anymore and they want to sell it. But also, very importantly, it will apply to these companies and platforms that do this as essentially their business model. So places like Viagogo and StubHub, where often you can go there to buy a ticket, which may have been, around £35, £50, but you'll see it listed for, over £200, £300 in some cases. And so this is something that artists and musicians, some sports clubs have been calling for a long time. We were speaking about it just last week, I think, when Dua Lipa and Coldplay, Radiohead put their names to this letter to the Prime Minister asking for something to be done. So tighter controls coming, but these companies will still be allowed to put a fee on their on those ticket sales like they normally do. But again, that will have a limit to it so that they can't overinflate those.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, the sort of one caveat I put on all of this is I do think when you look at all the press coverage as well this morning, is it's as if it's a reaction to what Oasis did last summer, and this won't change that. Because Oasis hiked the prices aggressively, but they just kept it for themselves, as opposed to it going through a reseller. So I think we also have to just be careful what we think this will solve. And we listed Dua Lipa, Coldplay, The Cure, others that joined that signatory last week. They better not then do what Oasis did. Yeah. If you remove the middleman that was hiking prices and making the most of the excess demand out there, but do it yourself, then we're going to come down on you hard.
But Will's quite cynical that this is going to lead to lower prices, you can probably tell, which is fair, I think.
Yeah, well, I think you also... we haven't seen the law yet, but are you also going to introduce to say that there has to be a ceiling to prices in general? If not, I think we're going to see it tick up, whether or not immediate or not, and it's just all going to go in the back pocket of the label and the
and not just the label and the artist, because StubHub and Viagogo have already said that this could also lead to a black market. going back in time to when people used to sell illicitly and, putting consumers at risk of fraud.
Yeah, at the same time, though, as someone who does watch quite a lot of live music, it is ridiculous, and I'm sure lots of people, it can be almost impossible to, as a fan, to get tickets for stuff, and then you just see loads of them at these ridiculously inflated prices.
But wouldn't we all agree that the single worst example of that in the last couple of years was the Oasis tour, which won't have been addressed by this? So I listen, we'll see what the legislation says, but I'm sceptical it's going to work. We'll see. Nadia, great stuff. Thank you.
Now, the US House of Representatives will vote later today on a bill that calls for the release of all of the Epstein files.
Donald Trump, who was mentioned in several of Jeffrey Epstein's email exchanges, was opposed to releasing them, but yesterday flipped his opinion and is now calling for Republicans to vote in favour of the release.
We have nothing to do with Epstein, the Democrats do. All of his friends were Democrats. Some of the people that we mentioned are being looked at very seriously for their relationship to Jeffrey Epstein, but they were with him all the time. I wasn't at all. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends, all of them. And it's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax. And I don't want to take it away from really the greatness of what the Republican Party has accomplished over the last period of time.
Now, the question of how we test our kids in school is a complicated one. There's obviously a balance between, exams and pressure and also wanting to make sure that people are progressing, right? And today, the star of Motherland, Anna Maxwell Martin, is among a group of parents sending a letter to the government calling for changes to how children with special educational needs and disabilities are tested in primary schools.
The group of 22 parents and campaigners say standard assessment tests, or SATs, have devastating effects for SEND students. Our education reporter, Anne Pierre-Bacos, joins us now with more of exactly what the argument is being made by these 22 sets of parents.
So lots of the parents have kind of written this open letter to the government, I think following the curriculum review quite recently, and I think they were waiting to see if any changes would be brought in at the SATs that we talk about in primary schools that are done at the Key Stage 1, sort of lower end of primary and then upper end of primary. And you're talking about children who at the age of 10 or 11 are sitting quite intense exams and they're kind of deemed worthy or not worthy, expected levels are met or not met. And I think for a 10 or 11-year-old, that's a lot of pressure. And I think that's what this letter is saying to Bridget Phillipson and the government, to talk about changes that can be brought in. Yes, there is definitely a place for exams and assessments to allow that children are progressing. But when we talk about children with specific needs, special educational needs and disabilities, it needs to be an inclusive approach and a purpose and a service that provides a way of assessing progress for all children, not just those children who are neurotypical and who the exams do serve. So that's kind of where this conversation has come about. And we've seen that Anna Maxwell Martin is one of the parents who is campaigning for this, and she said the government needs to look much harder at how to make things better for children in schools, particularly children with special educational needs and disabilities. This is a systemic failing within our assessment system and not the fault of any individual teacher or head teacher. So she's really asking for a system kind of overhaul or review at least to assess the needs of these particular children.
Can I ask very quickly, because I've got a lot of sympathy, I'll be honest, with this, about kids being tested too much and teachers having to teach for the exam, right? But my question is about special needs children in particular, because it seems to me that there is an argument some middle-class teachers, parents, basically say, my child has special needs, and as a result of that, they need extra time in exams, or they need to duck out of these exams. I mean, where do you draw the line? Because obviously, every child has needs, and children who are also, I guess, kind of neurotypical may also struggle with this kind of exam culture.
I think there's a real issue around special educational needs and disabilities, and that's why the system is being looked at with a task force that's being headed by Jeff Barton. And the Department for Education is very aware there's a huge issue around it because there's an issue with diagnosis, assessment, and also what support is then put in place. And this is all going to come out, hopefully in the new year, in the new white paper that's going to be published by the government. So it's definitely something that needs to be reviewed. And there are so many facets and layers to the problems that come with that. But I think what this letter is talking about today is that very pressurised system that we put very young children into. And yes, it may serve a portion of those children, but actually in the grand scheme of things, it's a one-size-fits-all, and we know children aren't really like that.
Andrew, great stuff. Thanks so much. Now, a new bronze statue of Bridget Jones has been unveiled in Leicester Square, and it's got the seal of approval from Renée Zellweger. She, of course, played Bridget Jones in the film.
Helen Fielding, who wrote the books, was also there for the big reveal. She was asked if there could be another chapter for Bridget Jones and said never say never, so watch the space. And this is what Renée Zellweger had to say.
It feels very lucky, because to be part of something that would sort of bring on such an occasion is not something that you ever expect as a creative person. It's just not, same way it feels very special.
What I was just going to say about this is, often when these statues get unveiled, everyone's like, what? Who is it meant to be? What's about?
It's quite good.
It's quite good, but they've also put Bridget Jones in massive writing behind it just to make clear. Because there's been a sort of comedy of errors with some of these, where everyone's like, I'm not even sure who that's meant to be.
That one is actually quite good.
Yeah.
I think that's not bad. Yeah,
anyway.
True.
There could be another instalment, by the way. The most recent one grossed £745 million at the box office, so it's hugely successful. So I imagine they'll milk that. And do
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can see that she was definitely leaving the door open for that as well, right? Now, lots to talk about today with our government guest, Steve Reid, the Housing Secretary. Of course, in his brief, he's got some important announcements to make, but it is interesting as well, I think, to get his view as well on what is going on in the Labour Party, as we have had, I think it's fair to say, a bit of a backlash from some MPs when it comes to those asylum reforms. Welcome. Good to have you with us. Thank you for being with us. Keen to talk about house building, super important. But just first, if I can, it felt like a huge moment for the government yesterday with the asylum reforms. And were you proud to be part of the government?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're speaking to voters on the doorstep, we all see, opinion surveys. This is a very significant issue for the public. We've seen the damage that it's caused to community cohesion, particularly in areas around asylum hotels, where the previous government chose as a matter of policy to stop processing applications and then put people in hotels, in some cases for years on end. Now, we can't go on with that situation, so we've taken action already, like the returns agreement with France, but we need to go further. And yesterday, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, laid out the approach that the Labour government will take to dealing with this problem, but in a way that respects the fair and tolerant nature of this country.
Because I guess some Labour MPs think that it doesn't respect the fair and tolerant nature of this country. Tony Vaughan, the rhetoric around these reforms encourages the same culture of divisiveness that sees racism and abuse growing in our countries. Stella Creasy, this is not just performatively cruel, it's economically misjudged. Nadia Whittome, the reforms are wrong on every level. What's your message to them? Should they just go and join the Greens?
No, absolutely not. But, every single one of us who is a Labour MP was elected on the same manifesto. And that manifesto committed us now as a government to securing our borders. It's very important that we do that. The British people expect us to do that. But we also have to end this vile trade in human lives. We are seeing traffickers who are persuading sometimes very vulnerable people to get on boats on the beaches of France and risk their lives coming across the English channel into the UK. We can't accept the level of danger and risk that is happening there. We've all seen some of those boats capsize, and we know what the results of that are. We need more safe routes that people can take to come into this country when they have a legitimate case to be here. But we have to take action to stop this trade by the traffickers in human lives.
I'm keen to talk about house building, because I feel like this is one of these issues that affects absolutely everything, and we don't talk about it enough, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you want to fast-track planning applications near stations. Why near stations?
That's right. Well, first of all, the reason people are interested in this subject is because we have a housing crisis in this country. When I was coming into the your studio this morning, we drove past shops and there are people lying in the shop doorways and it's freezing cold out there last night. Young people in their 30s now will routinely be living with their parents. Wasn't the case when I was younger. You could afford somewhere of your own to rent or to buy, and to too many younger people, that opportunity has been closed off because of the housing crisis. So we're looking at how we can support the development of housing in areas where people will want to live. Now, you've got stations around our great cities and towns where there are job opportunities available. You've got stations where you can build housing, the public transport is already in place, and you can develop communities there. So we want councils, who are the decision makers here, to support developers, get those homes built, build the new communities and give people somewhere that they can afford to live.
Can I ask you, what is going on with house building in London? It's got the slowest building rate in the country, only 4,000 new homes built last year, and most of them got planning permission under Boris Johnson. I mean, have you gone and had a word with Sadiq Khan?
Well, I mean, Sadiq Khan and I jointly a couple of weeks ago announced a housing package to stimulate house building in London.
I'm interested in how that happened. Did you go in and say to Sadiq Khan, look at these figures, we need to come up with a plan here, you're not doing well enough?
No. Sadiq and I speak regularly, and Sadiq wanted the government to work with him on a stimulus package, and I felt exactly the same, because what happened was in 23-24, so it was under the previous government, house building fell off a cliff.
Yeah, but it's just,
in London. The units that were being built suddenly reduced, and it's because of an increase in costs. So the cost of labour, the cost of materials,
and some of the
like concrete and
red
steel.
tape that was in place
and some
as well,
of the red
right?
tape,
Because that's what you tried to strip away. So part of it is to blame on.
Well, some of it is red tape. So the bits that I can't affect the global prices of materials. I can take away some of the costs that are associated with unnecessary red
everyone's affected
tape.
by the same prices of materials. The point is, there's a specific problem in London under Sadiq Khan. Do you accept that?
No. What there was too much red tape under the previous government, and in London, where the costs of labour are higher, then added to the other materials costs, it meant that house building fell off a cliff. So we've put in place a stimulus package that will see house building increase in London. Now we need to look beyond London as well, and you've got stations, which are very sensible locations to build housing because the public transport is already there. So you don't have to wait for the investment to get that infrastructure put in.
Can I ask you about ticket prices?
Yeah.
Because we're expecting some kind of announcement tomorrow about stopping people effectively reselling tickets.
Ticket touts,
Ticket touts, exactly,
Yeah.
making money from it. And I know you're probably slightly limited of what you can say, but it feels like the government is moving in that direction. Is that something you welcome? I don't know if you're a kind of gig fan yourself or...
Well, I go to the occasional. But, there's a big problem with, ticket touts, buying tickets in bulk and then increasing the prices and selling them on to people. This government is committed to ending that. We launched a consultation last year. We've got the results of that coming through, and it's actually my colleagues Peter Kyle and Lisa Nandy, the Business and Culture Secretaries, who will respond on the part of the government. But we are committed to ending the scandal of ticket touts inflating the prices that people pay to go and watch a favourite band or a gig.
Yeah, are you looking forward to getting cheaper tickets for anyone in particular, or a couple of sports games you want to see? I don't know.
I'm off to the theatre this weekend, but we just paid the normal price through the normal route.
There you go. Thank you very much, Steve Reed, speaking to us there. We'll also be speaking to Ziv Youssef, the head of Policy Reform UK, a little bit later on the programme as well.
Yeah, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. A reminder of the headlines this hour. Shabana Mahmood is facing a backbench rebellion over the government's bold new asylum policies. The Home Secretary has warned her fellow Labour MPs to back her reforms, which have been called cruel and inhumane.
US President Donald Trump's plan to send an international stabilization force to Gaza has been approved by a vote of the UN Security Council. It calls for a yet-to-be-established Board of Peace as a transitional authority, which President Trump would head.
Reselling tickets for live events for any sort of profit is set to be banned by the government. The decision comes a week after artists such as Dua Lipa and Coldplay urged Keir Starmer to protect fans from exploitation.
Now, Nigel Farage, the leader, of course, of Reform UK, has welcomed the Home Secretary's plans to fix what she's called a broken asylum system. Mr Farage even offered Shabana Mahmood the chance to join his party, to which she told him to sod off. And at 10 o'clock this morning, Reform will be laying out their plans to fix the country's finances. Well, Zia Youssef, who is head of policy at Reform UK, joins us now. Great to have you on the programme, Zia. And I'm very keen to find out your kind of alternative budget plans. But if I may, I did want to get your response first to the asylum row that's been kind of bubbling up. Shabana Mahmood faced a pretty fierce backlash from a lot of her own MPs. Would she be welcome in your party?
Well, as Nigel has said, if she really believes it, and who knows, maybe she does, Shabana Mahmood really does want to stop the boats. If she actually wants to do it, then you can go to reformparty.uk/defection. She can fill out a form. Look, jokes aside, we've heard this before. When I read about this in the papers on Sunday evening, I said what Shabana Mahmood was doing as Sunak. And what I mean by that is, if you remember, Sunak is one of many senior ministers, indeed prime ministers in this case, who set themselves the goal. In fact, Sunak said it was one of his KPIs as prime minister. He was going to stop the boats. And what happened? He ended up with more boats coming. That's exactly what we've seen with Labour too. It simply will not work unless you leave the ECHR, which she's not willing to do. Labour will never countenance that, and also derogate from a whole multitude of international treaties, at least on a temporary basis, until so that deportations can actually happen. It's not just about stopping the boats, it's about deporting the people who are already here in this country illegally. And we've already seen, I think the last count is 17 Labour MPs publicly condemn these plans. Some of those MPs have called their own Home Secretary racist. So sadly, we're in this exact same situation. We've heard it before. It's rhetoric. She hasn't even brought the bill to Parliament. One phrase we haven't heard in a really long time is smash the gangs. Do you remember that? We don't hear about any gang smashing anymore. And the reason for that is because obviously it didn't work. And the Borders Bill, Labour's Borders Bill, which they introduced in January, still has not passed. So the British people are sick and tired of these half measures. The only way to stop the boats is to do what we laid out in our plan, which was to leave the ECHR, derogate from those international treaties.
OK, I'm interested to hear your take on Shabana Mahmood's response in the Commons to the Lib Dem spokesperson, who is white, accusing her of stoking division. She said, I wish I had the privilege of walking around this country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and asylum system is creating across this country. Unlike him, unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called, and then she uses a racist expletive, and told to go back home. I just wondered your reflections on what she said there.
Look, obviously, that's a horrible thing to happen to anyone, and one sympathises with Shabana Mahmood. I will say this, though, that I take something of exception to the notion that that should be the reason why she suddenly appears to have had this Damascene conversion and thinks that now immigration is a really important issue, because what it implies is that racism is at the heart of why immigration is an issue in this country, and that's just simply not the case. People voted. The Tories promised to bring net immigration, legal immigration.
Do you think that's what she's saying? Do you think that's what she's saying?
No, I'm saying.
It felt to me like she was saying that she understands, the kind of division that a failed policy is causing, which is a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, but the point I am making is that there are people in this country, millions and millions of people, who have been deeply frustrated and indeed angry about levels of legal immigration, levels of illegal immigration. They voted for less immigration in 4 consecutive elections, which the Tories won, and then did the opposite of what they promised. So the point I'm making is that the reason why Reform have been campaigning for years, I've been campaigning on this issue around immigration, legal and illegal, for decades, has nothing to do with racism or racist slurs, but rather the rule of law, the idea that British people deserve to have borders, they deserve to have borders upheld, and the only reason, by the way, that we spend more than £50 billion a year on our defence budget, a lot of that on a Royal Navy, and yet must accept our borders being breached by unarmed men in dinghies every day, is total political failure.
You are presenting an alternative budget today. What's it going to look like?
Well, what we're saying is the British state exists to serve the British people. And so if tough decisions need to be made, we always hear that refrain from the political class. We've identified £25 billion of savings and revenue, which is enough to cover the black hole that Rachel Reeves has created and negate the need for tax rises. Almost all of those impact foreign nationals rather than British citizens. So to run through them quickly, number one, dramatic reduction in foreign aid, reducing that by north of 75%. Number two, ending welfare payments for foreign nationals, just the universal credit component of that alone. That's the only place where we actually get data from the government. They hide all the rest. That would save £6 billion this year alone, and then meaningfully increasing the immigration health surcharge. That is the annual fee that certain visa holders pay to access the NHS. By the government's own impact assessment, there is a 62% discount, effectively, that foreign nationals get when paying that relative to the true per-person cost of the NHS. You make those changes, and a couple of others, including our PIP reforms we've already announced, that gets you to £25 billion. And so, therefore, when Rachel Reeves inevitably raises taxes, she's choosing not to do that.
Just to jump in if I can, because look, you guys are kind of positioning yourselves as like the sort of serious party that could form the next government, right? That's what it's all about. You said that you'll save £10 billion from foreign aid, and you've highlighted £52 million to a so-called road to nowhere in Guyana, $90 million to help Pakistan stop child exploitation, $100 million to Pakistan for family planning. So that's £171 million. I guess my question is, you're kind of highlighting some of the easier choices here, when if you're real, you need to be talking about the difficult choices as well. You can't just cherry-pick the things that will be easy when it comes to foreign aid.
We highlighted just a handful of the most egregious examples. And as I said, while Labour was resisting a statutory inquiry into the grooming gangs, they were sending millions of pounds to Pakistan.
But you accept there'll be more difficult decisions on foreign aid that you haven't been highlighting, right?
Yeah, and we've been crystal clear that we would cut not just those programmes, we would reduce foreign aid by north of 75% until the state finances on a firm footing. How can it be justified?
If you're trying to bring people along,
paying their taxes?
I guess my argument is if you're trying to bring people with you on that massive reduction to foreign aid, don't you need to be upfront about what it will also mean? Because it's not just going to be, $52 million for a road to nowhere. There will be some other projects that will be harder to stomach, right?
Yeah, I think. Look, in the end, if quote difficult decisions need to be made for too long, the foreign aid budget, which last year, by the way, £14 billion it amounted to, and British people are being asked to pay ever more taxes. We're being really clear with British people. To the degree difficult decisions need to be made, we will prioritise British citizens. I know that seems like quite a novel and remarkable thing these days in Westminster, but the British state exists to serve British people, and we're going to ask foreign nationals to bear the brunt of the changes that need to be made to get the state finances on firm footing. And the fact that Labour are going to raise taxes inevitably in this budget is them effectively saying they want to continue to pay money to foreign nationals and prioritise them over British ones.
OK, Azir Youssef, thank you very much for being on the programme today. Thank you.
I think it's fascinating what Reform has done on their position on the economy in the last I mean, you could say a couple of weeks, certainly a couple of months, which is, ultimately the headline, I think, of their announcement today is going to be that we actually plan to cut spending. There was a moment, I don't know, a few months ago where there was a bit more of that sort of populist, we're going to shake the magic money tree and we can promise all things to all people. And they've really quite sharply U-turned on that now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've got a couple of things, haven't they? Like scrapping the two-child benefit cap is the kind of headline one as well, which, they're spending more money rather than just saving it as well.
I also thought his responses about were quite clever in terms of making the argument back to Shabana Mahmood a little bit, which it's going to be fascinating to see when this legislation comes forward, which of the parties vote for or not. I don't think Reform are going to make it, with their 5 or 6 votes, going to change. Unlikely they'll change the outcome of how the vote goes.
It'll be interesting to see, though.
It could be very, very close, but I think, therefore, they will score more points by voting for it, almost, and being magnanimous. But we'll see. It's going to be a really interesting one to keep an eye on. We're going to stick on the topic of the economy and money just quickly because this week we are on particularly the Sky News Money blog covering the cost of living for you as we approach Christmas.
So the idea of this is basically to stop you being fobbed off. So this week our Money blog team here at Sky News have been investigating lots of different consumer disputes and trying to solve them. And we can have a quick look, I think, at today's problem.
Yeah, today's problem came from Robert, who said Nationwide lost 70 grand of his money for 10 days. I think he's got it back, but the compensation that he's been offered, he thinks is ridiculous. And our Money blog team have figured out for Robert the best way to go about that with his bank. And if you've faced a similar type of issue, there's some lessons for you there as well. So scan the QR code on the screen right now and have a look at the Money blog this week, focusing on consumer rights. Now, we mentioned this at the top of the show. The CMA has come out with some new announcements today, and they're focused on online ticket retailers, appliance shops and a gym chain. They're being investigated by the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA. It's the first cases the watchdog has opened under its new consumer protection powers. They're also writing to 100 different businesses across 14 sectors, outlining some concerns they have with their sales tactics and fees. Well, Emma Cochrane, the Executive Director for the Consumer Protection Department at the Competition and Markets Authority, joins us now. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. So tell us what these 8 companies have been doing wrong.
So today we're announcing a big consumer protection drive. It's really important that consumers get clear, transparent pricing information and they're not put under unnecessary pressure to take snap decisions at the checkout. And so we're taking action to make sure businesses do the right thing by their customers. So as you say, we're launching enforcement action against these 8 businesses. We're also writing to 100 businesses to ask them to do more to protect consumers, and we're publishing guidance to make sure that businesses across the economy know exactly what they need to do to comply with the law.
What does enforcement action mean exactly?
So since April, we have had direct enforcement powers. That means we can investigate these businesses, we can find that they've broken consumer protection law if the evidence stands up, and we can order them to pay fines, and we can order them to pay compensation to their consumers if that's the right thing to do.
And of these 8 companies that you're taking action against, what's the most egregious, which is likely to lead to the biggest punishment?
So I can't talk about the specifics of the cases, but we've done an enormous sweep across the economy. We've looked at more than 400 businesses in multiple sectors, and we've selected enforcement action against these 8 companies and also letters to 100 others to ask them to do more to protect their consumers.
And so has this involved you reviewing all consumer businesses?
Not all consumer businesses, but 400 across multiple sectors of the economy. So really casting the net very wide and making sure that we're focusing in on businesses where we think they need to do the right thing.
And obviously this is using new powers that came under the Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act 2024. What was good and what was bad? Were you expecting more than 8 problem companies or less than 8? Are you kind of pleased overall with what you found or not?
So you can see that we're writing to 100 companies, we're taking enforcement action against 8, and it's clear that businesses across the economy need to have a good look at their practices, and you know, we're here to support consumers, to protect them, and we will take action where we see it. But this is just the start. This is the first cases that we're announcing, but we do expect more in due course. And so businesses need to keep an eye on what they're doing and ensure that they are doing the right thing.
And just finally, in terms of maybe those companies that are getting warning letters or others that are out there that you haven't got to yet, what is your message to them?
Read the guidance that we're publishing today. It's really practical. It sets out clear examples of what you need to do. Make sure you're complying. And if you don't, then we will be looking for further enforcement cases in future.
Emma, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you. Emma Cochrane there on that breaking news this morning coming out of the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority.
Now, campaigners are calling for reforms to how children with special educational needs are tested in schools. Coming up after this short break, we're going to be talking to Alison Ali from the campaign group More Than a Score.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. No freedom! Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in. Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous. We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey, it'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes. I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next? Available wherever you get your podcasts.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, we were talking earlier in the hour about testing in schools and also the impact on children with special needs. And a group of 22 parent groups and campaigners have today written to the Education Secretary calling for reforms to how children with special educational needs and disabilities are tested in primary school. So they say the current system actively harms children with special needs and is calling for a more inclusive approach.
Let's get more with Alison Ali from More Than a Score. It's a group campaigning to change the high-stakes, high-pressure assessment system in primary schools more broadly. Thanks so much for joining us on this. Break down what stands out for you in terms of SEND children in particular.
Well, I think for SEND, I think everybody needs to understand that SATs are designed to be a measure of schools, but in reality, the system leads to 10 and 11-year-olds shouldering the burden of their school's performance. And that means that all through school, and in Year 6 in particular, children are crammed and practice exam papers and inevitably feel a lot of pressure because of that. And for children with SEND, all those negative effects and other disadvantages can be really, really devastating.
I guess, I have a lot of sympathy with the fact that we're, testing our kids such a lot at such a young age and the pressure that it puts on them, and also the way it kind of distorts the education system as well, because teachers have to teach for these tests rather than just teaching kids a love of learning. I guess my question is, isn't this true of all children, not just those with special needs?
Absolutely correct. You couldn't have put it better. SATs damage all children. They damage the education of all children. They stop the thriving of all children. But what we're saying today is that they damage children with SEND the most. And, frankly, we have given the DfE so much evidence from so many parents, with and without SEND, from head teachers who teach children with and without SEND about the damaging effects of SATs and all the other tests. Our children are some of the most tested in the world. That's narrowing the curriculum, that's embedding a sense of failure for 40% of our children at an early age. That's 76% of children with SEND. And they just don't listen. They don't listen to the evidence. They don't listen to the facts. So what we're doing today is making a hugely emotional plea from families that are genuinely, absolutely devastated. These are families that fight to get their children into school because school damages their children so much. These are families that sometimes have to stop working because their children are so distressed by what's happening. So it's a wrecking ball.
Can I say that, I guess, just to put the kind of counter sort of point to it, is it important to have this regular testing? Firstly, it is good for schools to, be called up and see their progress as well, but also so they can identify kids who need extra support.
We absolutely believe that there is a role for assessment in schools, but assessment should be there, focus, and it should centre children's love of learning and support for children, and it should centre children's well-being. The DfE will argue till it's blue in the face that these tests are there to identify children who need extra support. These tests happen at the end of primary school. The children have been put through years of cramming for tests and being prepared for tests. It's not. These tests are there because the DfE lacks the imagination to think of a better way to assess and measure schools. But as parents, we know that teachers can give us the best information about our children, that very detailed personal information, personalised information. Teachers know what our children need at school. And what they don't need are these one-size-fits-all tests that are simply not fit for purpose.
Do we still ultimately need the exams to be the final judge, however often they're administered, but they're still needed, or do you disagree with that?
I disagree with exams for children aged 10 and 11. These are exams that talk about fractional equations and ratios and proportions, that talk about fronted adverbials and substantive clauses. We've sat MPs through these tests and they can't pass them. Most adults, you and I, would not be able to pass them. We can sit here in a studio and you've got your jobs and I've got mine and we can have a good conversation. We can't pass those tests. It's incredible that we think it's doing anything good and proving anything good about our education system or doing anything good for our children that we put them through tests that teach them these sorts of things. So we're not against assessment. There is a role for assessment. It should centre children's love of learning and well-being.
We're out of time. Thank you so much for being on the programme and making the points that you did. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, do you ever see posts of your favourite celebrities on socials and feel a really strong connection with them? Like when Taylor Swift got engaged to the American
You
football
felt that one, did you, Wilf?
I
Yeah.
really did. Yeah. Many people compare me to Travis Kelce, so that's why. Swifties everywhere were totally immersed in that moment.
Now, what Will's just describing so eloquently is Cambridge Dictionary's word of the year, parasocial. Now, that's defined as the connection that someone feels between themselves and a famous person they don't know.
I didn't even know this phrase. It's an interesting description, though, because, by the way, I've also seen it described as well. It's not just a famous person, but if people having conversations with AI chatbots, then you start to think to get to know them better than you did as well. And it's like this sort of fake friendship or relationship you have because of our connections to screens.
I'm also obsessed with the dictionary wars. You've got all these different dictionaries, Collins, Cambridge, all with their words of the year.
Dictionary.com we did earlier.
Yeah, dictionary.com.
Vibe coding was Collins.
It's like a kind of big rivalry.
And we haven't had Oxford yet.
I want to know more about the dictionary rivalry.
Does anyone still buy a dictionary? Why do they do it? Surely you just Google it. We've only got 10 seconds left, so we'll have to solve this in the break. You'll miss out on this very boring final conversation of the hour. We'll be right back with all the day's top stories. Don't go anywhere.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
A very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
We're Sophy and Wilf. Good morning from both of us. Let's get right to it.
The Home Secretary faces a rebellion from her own MPs over her asylum reforms, but unwillingly gains support from Reform's Nigel Farage.
He's making mischief, so I'm not going to let him live rent-free in my head. And just because he said something doesn't mean to say that I have to respond to it.
Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza is approved by the United Nations.
The government plans to ban the resale of live event tickets for profit as the competition watchdog names 8 companies it's investigating over online pricing.
What's next for Gaza? We're going to be getting the thoughts of the International Rescue Committee chief, David Miliband.
And London's favourite singleton is immortalised in Leicester Square. A statue of Bridget Jones in bronze is unveiled.
Hello, good morning. The Home Secretary is facing a backlash from some of her own MPs who've called her new asylum reforms cruel and inhumane.
In a passionate speech in Parliament, Shabana Mahmood laid out radical plans to fix what she's called a broken system of asylum. It was a moment of raw anger for the Home Secretary, who recounted the racist abuse she suffered herself. Her announcement was welcomed by Reform leader Nigel Farage, to which she had a blunt message: sod off.
Now, we just want to show you exactly what happened in the Commons yesterday, because, as Wilfred was saying, things got pretty heated when the Lib Dem spokesperson accused Shabana Mahmood of stoking division. Well, she then talked about being racially abused, and she repeated some pretty deeply offensive language. But if you just listen to what she said, I think you'll probably understand why.
I have to say to the honourable gentleman, I wish I had the privilege of walking around this country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and asylum system is creating across this country. Unlike him, unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a and told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country.
Was the Home Secretary, and earlier Sophy spoke to the head of policy at Reform, Zia Youssef.
Look, obviously that's a horrible thing to happen to anyone, and one sympathises with Shabana Mahmood. I will say this, though, that I take something of exception to the notion that that should be the reason why she suddenly appears to have had this Damascene conversion and thinks that now immigration is a really important issue, because what it implies is that racism is at the heart of why immigration is an issue in this country, and that's just simply not the case.
Well, let's speak to Rob about this. It shows what a kind of emotive issue it is, doesn't it? Listening to Zia there, listening to Shabana in the House of Commons as well, which really was, I think, one of those moments where everyone just kind of had a sharp intake of breath and thought, my goodness, this is quite something.
And I don't think Zia Youssef, when he says she's implying racism is at the heart of all of this, I don't think that's quite correct, because I don't think that's what the Home Secretary
I did pull him up on that, I should say, yeah.
But it's interesting contrasting the Reform interview with what you hear from the Home Secretary, because a lot of the diagnosis is the same, right? It's that for years and years and years, politicians have said that immigration will come down and will control illegal immigration. They haven't. Hence, people are angry, annoyed, and are losing faith in politics. But I think this is where the two parties sort of diverge, because Zia Youssef, in that interview, talked at one point about how we spend more than £50 billion on defence and yet must accept all our borders being breached by unarmed men in dinghies. Now, none of that is factually incorrect, but they've used this sort of quite visual militaristic language before to describe small boat arrivals. And I think when Labour MPs are coming to the government and saying, you sound a lot like Reform UK, they'll point at stuff like that and say, no, because we're not saying that. We're not using language like that. And I think when Reform lean into that sort of quite kind of tub-thumping rhetoric that really does walk quite close to the line sometimes, I think they help Labour in trying to advance their argument about why they need these reforms to get through.
Which is a very good point. I do think there's another one, which is if you step back over the last month or so, of course, the Prime Minister did accuse Reform of being racist with a policy that was about abolishing indefinite leave to remain. And Labour's new policy, for a certain group of people only, is extending it to 20 years to qualify for that. which many people would feel like is akin to abolishing it. So there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of certain language that comes close to this or not. But I kind of think he has a bit of a pushback there to make when his party has been labelled as racist by the Prime Minister.
I think, though, when you look at the policy, there's another point in that Zia Youssef interview where he said, this isn't enough, we need to start deporting people that are here illegally. That reforms policy goes further than that, right? The indefinite leave to remain policy is get rid of indefinite leave to remain. So people that are here legally, that may be working, then have to apply for a visa. And if they don't reach the visa requirements, then they'll be deported. So, that is deporting people that are here legally. And I think it's those sort of quite niche but differences that I think those in government will be talking to Labour MPs about when they are trying to reassure them that, look, what we are doing is different from what reformers suggest.
And they are different, as you say. Let's listen, shall we, to political editor Beth Rigby, who spoke to Shabana Mahmood about some of the stuff, and Nigel Farage in particular.
I'm not really interested in anything that Nigel Farage has to say. I think that there are various individuals who at the moment are seeking to make mischief, and I'm not interested because I really mean it when I say I haven't had anything about other political parties and other politicians in my mind. I have a solemn responsibility as the Home Secretary of this country who can see a broken asylum system. It is my job to fix it. I know people are angry about this broken asylum system, and I know that it is fueling division across our country. So it's my job to put that system to right, to reform it, and to unite our country.
He said you'd be welcome to join reform with these sorts of asylum.
Honestly, Nigel Farage can sod off. I'm not interested in anything he's got to say.
No, but really, you've spoken to me about him before, about how you think some of his policies are dog whistle politics.
Well,
how does it make you feel when he thinks you're aligning with him?
Because he's making mischief, so I'm not going to let him live rent-free in my head. And just because he said something doesn't mean to say that I have to respond to it just because he's making mischief.
Tommy Robinson endorsed your plan.
Well, I'll deal with that in just one moment. But the Reform Party currently has a policy to rip up indefinite leave to remain of those who have been long-term settled in our country. That is immoral, it's deeply shameful, and it is the wrong policy.
We were talking about this earlier, but it's refreshing to see a politician who's on the front foot and not apologising for the position, even when they're facing an onslaught and kind of arguing for the reason why they took those positions. We'll see, Rob, if this all passes. There's a lot of questions, who's going to vote for what, and will there be divisions within the parties? The big question, though, really, is going to be, will it work? And there is enough time between now and the election, if these policies go far enough, which obviously Shabana Mahmood hopes they do, to see a change in the numbers, which will be what really matters.
Yeah, that's the number that matters. I think it's the number of people crossing the channel. That needs to come down to close to zero, if not zero. And yeah, that is the only thing that matters. I think they'll suffer legal complexities, I think, in that they are telling courts to interpret international treaties, the European Convention on Human Rights, in a different way. That will no doubt be looked at as well. And then I think there's that difficult question of knowing how much of kind of what we're discussing sitting around this table will really get through to the desperate people that are trying to get across the channel, because that's the whole point of all of these changes, is to put in a deterrent effect so that people think twice about paying money to get in a small boat. And when you talk to people that sort of analyse this, they say actually policy changes, even though we might sit here and go, wow, this is so significant, whether that seeps through and enters the mindset of people when they are making that big choice. Actually, they say there are other factors, that English is a language, that more people can speak English, so they want to come here. Family members that are here as well. And that's stuff that, you can't really chip away at that, right? So, yeah, it is difficult. But I think I was struck at a Labour conference. I went to an event that Shabana Mahmood did with Michael Gove, who is, interestingly, for a Tory cabinet minister, seems very, very impressed by her. And she was asked by a member of the audience, how are you going to do this with a Home Office that many people acknowledge is not in a great shape as an institution to push through radical reform like this? And her answer was, well, I guess it's Shabana versus the Home Office, choose your fighter.
Wow, there you go. That's quite telling, that, isn't it?
I remember that event, actually. There was it was during the Starter conference and before the rhetoric came out with the racist word, and it was very, very interesting. Actually, it's worth people going back to watch that. It was a good conversation. Rob, great stuff, thank you.
Now, the UN Security Council has voted in favour of President Trump's plan to send an international stabilisation force to Gaza. So the resolution was backed by 13 countries. Perhaps predictably, Russia and China both abstained.
And it's a big topic, and we're going to be talking about it to come with David Miliband, of course, former Foreign Secretary and head of the International Refugee Commission and International Rescue Committee, excuse me. He's in the background and he's mocking me for getting that wrong, which so he should. So he should. I had the letters in front of me.
I wish you could cut to a camera of the laughing David Miliband.
This is annoying. It's embarrassing. At least I got his name right.
Yeah, that's good.
Hopefully he'll still come on.
Yeah, I think so. He can't leave now. Anyway.
He's a great guest. We are lucky to have him. Come back, David. Don't leave.
We've got him. There he is. There you go.
He's staying. We're going to be with David in just a moment. Right, let's get to the other quick breaking news from the morning before that. And it's a possible boost to consumer rights. Several companies are going to be investigated by the CMA, the body that ensures fair competition for customers.
Separately, the government's also preparing to ban the resale of tickets for live events above their face venues. So that's basically cracking down on ticket touts.
There's a big problem with, ticket touts buying tickets in bulk and then increasing the prices and selling them on to people. This government is committed to ending that. We launched a consultation last year. We've got the results of that coming through, and it's actually my colleagues Peter Kyle and Lisa Nandy, the Business and Culture Secretaries, who will respond on the part of the government. But we are committed to ending the scandal of ticket touts inflating the prices that people pay to go and watch a favourite band or a gig.
So, Sanjay, sort of two stories here that have emerged this morning, but both kind of really trying to help consumer rights.
Yeah, so let's start with the first one, the investigations launched by the CMA. This comes after a new law was passed last year, which essentially means the CMA can decide whether there's been a breach of consumer rights law so that people don't have to go through the courts. And so they started this review in April, looking into 400 companies across 19 sectors. And then they identified concerns across 14 sectors and a number of companies, and they've started these investigations into 8 companies. They are StubHub, Viagogo, AA Driving School, BSM Driving School, Wayfair Appliances Direct, Gold's Gym and Marks Electrical. These are the first cases to be launched under these new powers. And essentially what it's looking at is whether their pricing strategies were fair. And it's stuff like drip pricing, where, you'll be offered a certain price for something, and then as you go along the transaction process, more things get added on. And also pressure selling. So if there's like a timer that's counting down, which is banned under this law, it's stuff like that, trying to pressure consumers into buying something.
And then we've also got the story on touts.
So the CMA are due to be really busy because they've also got the powers now to enforce the rules which will come into place, we understand, due to be announced tomorrow, where you cannot resell tickets. If you've bought a ticket for a gig or a sporting event or a concert, you can't resell it at a price higher than what you purchased it for. Companies will still be allowed to have fees, which they add on already, but that will also be capped. And this affects secondary sales companies like Viagogo and StubHub, and also included in that will be social media companies. So it's not like if those secondary companies pull out of this, that the social media companies can step in and start profiting.
Interesting stuff. Thanks very much.
Now, the US House of Representatives will vote later today on a bill calling for the release of all the Epstein files. Donald Trump, who was mentioned in several of Jeffrey Epstein's email exchanges, was originally opposed to releasing them.
He was, but yesterday he flipped his opinion, and now he's calling for Republicans to vote in favour of the release.
We have nothing to do with Epstein, the Democrats do. All of his friends were Democrats. Some of the people that we mentioned are being looked at very seriously for their relationship to Jeffrey Epstein, but they were with him all the time. I wasn't at all. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends, all of them, and it's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax, and I don't want to take it away from really the greatness of what the Republican Party has accomplished over the last period of time.
President Trump, of course, awaiting that vote later today. He's also said that his plan to send an international stabilization force to Gaza has been approved by a vote of the UN Security Council. The resolution was backed by 13 countries, with Russia and China abstaining. Well, Tom Fletcher, he's the head of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, has told Sky News half of the crossings into Gaza that do remain closed are slowing the flow of aid.
We have seen a real surge in what we can get in. We're getting millions of meals out. We're getting tens of thousands of tents in. So important right now as winter is approaching and so many people's homes are flooded. We're starting to stand up the health sector again. We're starting to get kids back into some form of education. But this is a drop in the ocean. So much more is needed. And we're still facing impediments. We've only got half of the crossings open into Gaza that need to be open.
Delighted to say that David Miliband, the Chief Executive of the International Rescue Committee, is with us now. David, a pleasure to have you with us.
Nice to be with you, Wilf.
Let's start with that in terms of how much aid is getting in from your teams on the ground. You're very informed on this. Is it improving at all in recent days and weeks, or
well, it's
not?
Better than when the war was raging, but it's nowhere near as good as it needs to be, and it's not even the flow from before October the 7th, 2023. So our own teams, they're able to feed their own families, they're supporting some clients, but we're at half the level of aid flows that existed before the war, and the commercial traffic is massively restricted as well. So it's a very, very challenging situation. People are holding on to one thing, that's the hope that there's a future for them. This vote in the UN Security Council yesterday is important. It means there's international backing. No one vetoed it. There's international backing for this stabilization force. And there's some discussion going on about what kind of government could be there. You've got 2 million people crowded in. Thank God the hostages have been let out, but those 2 million people have lost their homes, they've lost their relatives, tens of thousands killed. So it's an acute emergency. It's not the largest humanitarian emergency in the world, that's in Sudan, but it's an acute emergency of dire need.
The UN vote, how positive a step was that? And as recently as weeks or months ago, was it possible this vote wouldn't have been as, I guess not resounding is not the right word, but it was a firm vote?
Well, put it this way. Imagine if it had been reversed. If there'd been a veto, if it had been blocked, we'd have said that was really extinguishing a small light that existed that offers some hope. The UN Security Council resolution is all 20 points of the so-called Trump plan, which is about a ceasefire, it is about governance, but it also holds out the prospect that there needs to be new energy in this drive for this so often repeated phrase, but increasingly meaningless phrase, the two-state solution that people have talked about for 60 or 70 years.
So when you say it's meaningless, you don't think it's going to result that way?
Well, increasingly meaningless. It's become rhetoric rather than reality. Mm-hmm. When I first got into politics in the 90s, you had the Oslo process. There was a genuine sense of momentum about the idea that there could be a Palestinian state living alongside Israel. The facts on the ground have changed so much in the last 30 years. Many people are now saying it'll never be achieved. A lot of people saying this is the last chance. So the fact that this UN Security Council resolution got widespread support, the Arab states supported it, America supported it, Europeans supported it, China and Russia didn't veto it, even though it was a Trump plan. That's important because the reversal would have been really very, very serious.
I wanted to touch as well on the announcements yesterday by the Home Secretary as it relates to those seeking refuge. I mean, two articles in particular in the ECHR are getting her attention. Article 8 on family life I'll come to, but Article 3 I was really interested in your take on. This relates to whether people can be deported back to their home country if they might face torture, inhumane or degrading treatment. The Home Secretary said that the definition of inhumane and degrading has expanded beyond what is reasonable. That central point, is that fair for her to say that?
So just to understand, the Refugee Convention, which is the 1951 International Convention, says that no one should ever be sent back to somewhere where they have a quote-unquote well-founded fear of persecution. That has to be interpreted, essentially I would say colloquially it means if it's not safe for you to go back. Now, the definition of torture then gets assessed in a series of court cases. I haven't seen what she's said today about the detail, the paper that she put out last night about the details of this. What counts to me is the following. It should be sacrosanct that you don't get sent back to danger, and the two countries that have the most people coming across the channel are Sudan and Afghanistan. There is well-founded fear of torture if you were sent back to those countries, so that's important. Secondly, it's very important to me that people who pass the test of being a refugee are integrated in society, make a contribution to Britain. Those who don't qualify shouldn't be allowed to stay. It's absolutely critical that that's run effectively. And we do some work on that, actually, in countries including the UK. Thirdly, and absolutely critically, I think, for this, let's not forget that people who come here as refugees and qualify then make a positive contribution to the society. So there's a positive element to this. Now, the government has to make sure that this is a well-ordered system. I run a humanitarian agency. That doesn't mean I say everyone should come in. No, you've got to have an orderly, well-run system. And I think the numbers on this use of this European Court on Human Rights, which is not an EU court, it's a larger grouping of European countries. The figure I saw yesterday is that of the 100,000 people who came across last year, 1,000 this ECHR point related to us. So I think that's relevant. In the end, it'll be for the courts to do it.
I guess then, given, as you said, you're not necessarily articulating that everyone should be allowed to come here, when you take all of this approach together by the new Home Secretary, are you largely understanding and supportive of her? I guess central to, we could say that the qualification for permanent settlement is now 20 years versus 5. Does that feel unfair to you? Because I think central to this is, would your message to Labour MPs be, you're right, this is going too far, or guys, if you don't support this, be careful what comes next. It's going to be a much more hammer to a kind of screen approach to things.
Well, my message, our message as an organisation, is that we've got to look beyond the headlines in the way that you're doing. So I'm not having a knock on you. Even this 20 years thing, the Home Secretary said yesterday, we're going to look at what it actually means. Because obviously, if you're making a contribution to Britain, you're in business, you're a doctor, you're in sport, you're a contributor to the country. So there's a lot of things that still need to be worked on. What we know from our own work in the US, I run an organisation that was founded by Albert Einstein, who was a refugee in America. In America, you can become a citizen after 5 years as a refugee. Now, President Trump has stopped refugees coming in, but all those who've come in over the last 5 years, it takes them 5 years to become a citizen. And the critical thing is that their integration, getting people into work, getting them to learn the English language, that's a well-established system that involves government and the charitable sector. And we need similar drive in the UK, because I think that while not everyone can come here, we're 5th in the European League for people who are coming to claim asylum in this country. We're not top of the league. We've got to make sure that the system works well. And I just want to add one more point. One of the things that hasn't had any coverage and is going to be critical is how quickly these decisions are made. Because if someone arrives, you don't want them waiting a year or 2 years, because that's how you end up with the backlog and the problems that have been associated with it.
I wanted to ask a final question about the Labour Party and the government. A new poll today saying 45% of Labour supporters want to see the Prime Minister change before the next election. For a government with this big a majority this early in its term, is that quite a damning indictment?
I think this is a very challenging time to be in government, and it needs governments to focus on their core business. What's their cause? What are their big policies? How are they going to have the unity and drive to see it through? And I think that's what counts above all else. In the end, the poll that counts is obviously a general election poll. The public have elected a government. The government needs to get on with its business. Being a good government is the absolutely critical message.
And watching from afar as you do in America, what is this government's cause?
I think the government's cause is to make for a Britain that has more opportunity and more security for more people. The historic point of the Labour Party is it stands for majority aspiration. That's the absolute driving force that brought me into politics. I'm sure it's what brought the current generation of leaders into politics. And it's vital that they stick to that. They mobilise it. They make it for the modern world. So everything from the tech revolution and how that creates insecurity but also creates opportunity, to what you were talking about special educational needs, to welfare reform. That is an animating cause, because I know that this is a country of enormous potential and we want to see it fulfilled.
I mean, you're talking about what the party stands for and you're capturing it very well. Could a different individual make that case to the public better than the current?
No, I think the Prime Minister has enormous integrity, enormous seriousness of purpose. He's a methodical person and he should get on with his job. The MPs should get on with their job. The public have a total right to express their opinions, whether in polls or in anywhere else. That's the point of a democracy. And one of the reasons I'm here this week, I gave a lecture on Sunday. There are more autocracies in the world than there are democracies. For us, I'm older than I'd like to be, but in the 90s, there was a wave of democratization around the world after the end of the Cold War. In the 2000s, that sustained. In the last 20 years, we're now in a situation where there are 91 dictatorships and 89 democracies in the world. We have to make our democracy work. It's vibrant, that's good, but we've got to make sure that the government focuses on its core business.
You're saying the Prime Minister has to get back to his job. I know you do have to get back to New York for your very important job at the International Rescue Committee. Does your job stay in New York now? You never want to return to frontline politics?
You know that I always give the same answer, and then it always gets... Yeah, I do. I always give the same answer, which is I'll always decide my professional options according to where I can make most difference, according to my own values, consistent with serving my family, which is obviously very, very important to me. And then people say, oh, never say never. We're all getting younger, aren't we? So we can all think about the future. No, I give the same answer. And I admire those people who are in politics today. It's tough in politics, but it's always been tough in politics. But I admire their commitment to public service. And I'm making my own contribution through the charitable sector. That's consistent with my values too.
Very good to see you, David. We really appreciate it.
Thanks
so much for stopping by. Safe travels back wherever they take you to the next stop. David Miliband there. Well, we asked his brother the same question. Who was more convincing?
What, on the leadership thing? Well, I think they both were quite convincing.
Both quite convincing, I think.
Miliband ruled it out as well, I should say. I thought it was very interesting hearing about the animating cause of politics, aspiration. And it does seem to me that if you look at any successful Labour government, that is what's been at the heart of what's led them to that success.
Yeah. But as ever, a very good communicator in getting that argument across. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll be talking to the former Olympic champion, Dame Denise Lewis. Don't go anywhere. She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back to Mornings with Ridge and Frost. A reminder, the headlines: Shabana Mahmood is facing a backbench rebellion over the government's bold new asylum policies. The Home Secretary has warned her fellow Labour MPs to back her reforms, which have been called cruel and inhumane.
The US President Donald Trump's plan to send an international stabilization force to Gaza has been approved by a vote at the UN Security Councils. The proposal calls for a yet-to-be-established board of peace as a transitional authority, headed by President Trump.
Reselling tickets for live events for any sort of profit is set to be banned by the government. The decision comes a week after artists such as Dua Lipa and Coldplay urged Sir Keir Starmer to protect fans from exploitation. Separately, the UK competition watchdog is launching investigations into 8 companies over online pricing practices.
Now, taking time out of work to raise a family means 1 in 3 women are pushed into what's called pension poverty. It's according to a new report. And the difference for men and women is often much larger, in particular in sport. So in April this year, ONS, that's Office of National Statistics, figures say that men earned an average of 7.1% more than women.
For example, in football, male Premier League players earn over £3 million per year on average. It's crazy, isn't it? Female players in the Women's Super League earn around £47,000 per year on average.
Well, we're joined now by someone who is a bit of a superstar. I'm quite excited to have her in the studio. Olympic heptathlon champion and broadcaster Dame Denise Lewis. And thank you for being with us. And you want to open up some of these important conversations. Why is this an issue that you've decided to speak out on?
Well, it's an issue that I know because I have been largely self-employed all my career. I have been an athlete. You retire in your 30s, and then you're still having to think about, how you're going to make a living right into your retirement age. And as you saw, those stats that you just highlighted there, that women are usually at the brunt of these issues where we're talking about the gender pension gap, which is quite frightening, really, that you can be competing or representing your country and be struggling financially because you haven't done that prior planning. So, as I said, this Scottish Widows report, the Women in Retirement report, really does highlight those facts that, women, if you don't do the work before your retirement age, you will be struggling and be forced into pension poverty.
And obviously they point particularly to the pension gap. The gender pay gap is something that's clearly in existence across all sectors. But the statistics, we just mentioned it for football, when it comes to sport, are astonishing. A couple of sports in a high-profile way have moved to equal pay, and tennis is perhaps the most high-profile example. Do you think that should be the norm across all sports? And do you think it's realistic when you see the size of that gap? Is it something that should be closed in the years ahead?
Well, you're talking about, as I say, the income and not necessarily revenue generated, but for me here today, it is about doing what you can with whatever finances you have to secure your future. As I highlighted, that I have been competing. I had a financial advisor during my 20s when I really wasn't thinking about retirement. It was just, am I handling my business and my financial affairs well enough to secure my future? So the amount of iterations that I've had, having to go into retirement and changing career pathways, baby breaks or maternity breaks I've had, has meant that, it's important for me to make sure that I'm doing my contributions and really opening this conversation today that do the work, sit down, having conversations about how career breaks do impact you long term and making sure that you're seeking advice.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And when we talk about kind of sports stars and athletes, you always think about the ones right at the top. And actually, this is why the Olympics always gets me. I'm like a blubbering child at the Olympics. I just cry basically all the way through, because you just have these kids who haven't earned much money. They've just been getting up at like 4 a.m. for like 5 years or whatever to go to the swimming pool or whatever it is. No glory, no one watching them. And then they have this moment of magic. But I guess there is a reality to that. Like you say, you might not be earning loads of money. And the retirement age too. I mean, talk us through what happened when you retired as well. It must have been quite difficult.
Well, notably, I'm thinking of Gail Ems when you're talking about athletes that have spoken about finding financial difficulties post her career, where she was Olympic silver medalist in badminton in 2004, if my memory serves me well. And then when she got into her 40s, really found it difficult, trying to make ends meet. And that's being well documented. But me in particular, finding myself retiring at 30, you do kind of wonder how you're going to survive. But most people are in that situation where they're having to be creative, but it's really the work, as I said, making sure that do it now, put something away for later on in your life.
Which is actually good advice for anyone, I should say, sports stars in particular, but actually everybody as well, to be honest.
Just finally on that moment of leaving sports, I know you've talked about this before, but from the unbelievable ecstasy and the glory to then a more normal job, having to come and talk to us rather than to
calm down.
it must be a really tough put aside the money part, it must be a really tough transition.
It's a really tough transition. The loss of identity, wondering how you're going to support yourself, find a new career pathway. But as you can imagine, when you're involved in sport, it is your life, and you're almost blinkered to a degree. We are trying to re-educate athletes and sports women particularly about how they transition out of that active sporting life and to do something else. So for me it was difficult, but I'm glad that the confidence that I had to go into something else has paid dividends long term.
Yeah. Amazing.
Awesome to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And also well done for the work you've done to kind of highlight this stuff. I'm sure a lot of people, hopefully, listening will be impacted by it as well.
Dame Denise Lewis there. And just a quick pick up, Sophie, on the, whether we save enough for retirement. All people, forget gender, forget profession.
Yeah.
Because as we pivoted from expecting an income tax hike in the budget that could have raised a lot of money to this smorgasbord approach, one of the areas they're talking about is increasing taxes on your pension contributions. We don't know, it's speculation, it's crazy how many things we're speculating about. That's not going to make the nation as a whole save more for retirement. And again, if you go down that smorgasbord approach, the sort of negative potential consequences are going to be, more in number because you're touching more tax areas.
The pension thing is a huge deal. It really is. It really is.
I'm looking forward to the budget. It's going to be fun.
I think you're probably the only person in the country who's looking forward to the
I think you are as well.
No, I am actually, to be honest.
But I think it's going to be fascinating to
I
watch it all unfold. I'm not looking forward to taxes going up, but I think it'll be really interesting because it keeps changing.
Now, the question of how we test our kids in school is a complicated one. The balance between exams and pressure and, of course, wanting to maintain standards and spot any kids that perhaps falling behind. And today, the star of Motherland, Anna Maxwell-Martin, is among a group of parents who is writing to the government calling for changes to how children with special educational needs and disabilities are tested in primary school.
Well, a group of 22 parents and campaigners say standard assessment tests, or SATs, have devastating effects for SEND students. Our education reporter, Anjum, is here with us to discuss about it. Anjum, so break down what these 22 parents are arguing here.
So they've done some research, and what they found is that of SEND children, so children with special educational needs and disabilities, only 24% of those children will meet the expected levels at SATs at Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 1. And that's a real concern because you're saying that only a quarter of the children who have those needs are going to be able to meet those levels. And often that's the way that they judge themselves, that schools then judge them when they go into secondary school. And at 10 or 11 years old, you're kind of pigeonholing these children into this area. And it's having a huge impact, these campaigners are saying, on their self-esteem, on their confidence, on their self-belief. And they've said in their research that 67% of the children are having a real negative impact when it comes to wanting to go to school as a result of this kind of pressure and the stress that SATs cause at that very young age. And so we said, like, Anna Maxwell Martin is one of these parents and is campaigning quite vigorously, and she said that the government needs to look much harder at how to make things better for children in schools, particularly children with special educational needs and disabilities. This is a systemic failing within our assessment system, not the fault of any individual teacher or head teacher. And I think this comes after the curriculum review recently, and I think they were looking for possible changes and reforms in that area, but none were forthcoming. So this is their response.
And actually, like you say, Angela, the only change was actually to increase more testing, which they did in kind of year 8. So what was that, when you kind of, 12, 13, to try and make sure, they would say, to try and kind of make sure standards are there and to make sure people don't have a lost year. But others would say it's just more teaching to test, more pressure on kids. Thanks very much.
Now, next this morning, there's hope that a common jab used against the Epstein-Barr virus, which causes glandular fever, could in fact be used as a treatment for multiple sclerosis.
So a new trial will look at whether suppressing EBV, which is found in virtually all people with MS, could be a safe and effective way to treat the condition.
Let's talk about it with Professor David Hunt from the University of Edinburgh, who's leading the trial and joins us. Thanks so much for joining us, Professor. So firstly, this is an existing vaccine that you're about to begin a trial with on the area of MS?
That's correct. So this is an investigational vaccine that has been developed specifically to try and target and develop immune responses against the Epstein-Barr virus, which has been increasingly implicated as a root cause of multiple sclerosis. So the vaccine is designed to improve existing immune responses against the virus, which we know infects many people and can lie dormant and hidden in the immune system lifelong.
And are glandular fever and MS two things that we've always known are very linked, or is this kind of new research that's leading to this?
There has been a suspicion of a link for many years, but strong evidence linking this has been a real breakthrough in the last 2 years. So the evidence has really strengthened, and this has been awarded the Breakthrough Prize in Life Sciences. This has been a really important link because it helps open new avenues for the treatment of the condition and also potentially in the future for prevention of multiple sclerosis.
And on that note on MS, I mean, if people are watching it with MS, we don't want them to get their hopes up artificially. What are the prospects from here, a timeline and the extent to which it could change their condition?
So the current trial is an innovative trial to try and use this investigational vaccine, which has been developed by Moderna. It's currently undergoing, the clinical trial is focused on safety, but it will also tell us whether this strategy of trying to control EBV infection in people with MS could also reduce MS activity. That trial will take a couple of years to report so that we can fully understand that. But potentially these treatment strategies would then be taken further in clinical development after that.
Professor Hunt, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, we've obviously just been talking to Dame Denise Lewis about some of the difficulties of being forced into an early retirement if you're a sports person. But up next, we're talking to a couple who chose to do it. Get this might wind you up. Katie and Alan Donegan managed to retire at the age of 35. We're going to find out how.
Yeah, they didn't win the lottery. They planned and they got there, and they're going to share their tips.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power.
No freedom!
Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado.
What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters?
The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
OK, so imagine being able to travel to any country you want, never setting an alarm clock again. That particularly feels quite good to us, I think. The ability to never work a day in your life again after the age of 35. Well, for many of you, of course. I actually love work, but there you go. It sounds too good to be true. But not for this couple, Kate and Alan Donegan, who both retired at 35. Extraordinary. Before we get to the interview, because I want to find out a lot about how you did this, I just want to bring everybody your top tips for how to do it. So just to show people at home, if you want to be, on the beach at 35, step 1, have an emergency fund of £1,000. Step 2, pay off any high-interest debt. That's good advice. Step 3, build a full emergency fund, so more than £1,000, I'm guessing. And then step 4, start investing for the long term.
I love these types of tips, guys. Katie and Anna, thanks so much for joining us to share more about this. I mean, to me, the top bit that comes out of that is a early plan to save and invest to hope that the money you're not spending grows. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, before you get to any of those steps, in order to be able to do any of that, the key thing that people have to do, and this is what we've learned from teaching tens of thousands of people through Rebel Finance School, is that the only way to get ahead is to have a gap between what you're earning and what you're spending. You can't do those steps if you don't have that. You need to have that gap.
Be good if the Chancellor was watching this.
And talk us through the kind of sacrifices you made to have that gap. Because if you're trying to get that savings gap, if you like, you've got to stop spending money on things. What kind of things were you sacrificing?
We never really saw it as sacrifice. We saw it as a fun game to get the expenses down. So we downsized the car, we made salads at home, which actually made us more healthy.
Yeah, there's always that dual benefit of them between saving money and being healthier. We would cook in, we would batch cook, we would take our lunches to work with us. Yeah, it became this fun game that we wanted to play because we were so focused on buying our freedom and we never saw it as a sacrifice. And actually we had a lot of fun with it. You know, you could choose to do anything with your friends. We're like, well, why not come round and play games at our house rather than going out for a fancy meal?
So I mean, despite those very clever tips and how brilliantly you executed them, it still sounds a bit too good to be true. Were you guys earning an awful lot? Was there a sudden windfall from a clever investment or a house purchase? Because you've got a lot of years ahead of you to retire into and not earn. It just doesn't quite add up.
There was no windfall, there was no inheritance, no lottery, nothing like that. We did focus very heavily on increasing our income and creating a big gap. We fully minimised our expenses. We had a small 2-bedroom flat in Basingstoke, and we created this huge gap, which then the question was, how do you invest? And we spent so much time going, well, how do you buy an asset? What is an asset? Where's the asset shop?
Yeah, we spent so long. We knew that we wanted to invest our money, but there's no education out there as to how to do that. And that's something that we struggled with for a long time.
Just to sort of come in, because I guess the difficult, and it's all about reducing spending, but I guess there's an awful lot of people at the minute, including people watching this programme, who just don't have that much flexibility in their costs. And I'm particularly thinking about childcare costs that are extortionately high, and also housing costs as well. I mean, you kind of talk about the sort of 2-bedroom flat in Basingstoke, which, obviously was something that was a kind of frugal investment for you. But I think it is right, in 2010, it cost you $167,000. And obviously a lot of people, sadly nowadays, are spending an awful lot more of their income on housing than probably you did in 2010.
Yeah, that was something we did focus on, to reduce those fixed costs so that we were able to save and invest. And I think a lot of people are scared to face up, to look at where their money's actually going, because they say, you can't get ahead, times are hard, and I understand that. And I'd love people to actually look at their spending, because people turn to us and they say,
but I guess what I'm saying there is that the bulk of what people are spending is on things that they cannot reduce. Like they need, a flat over their head. If you live in a big city, then even if you're on spare room or whatever like that, then it's, going to cost you a big chunk of your income. Childcare costs as well. It's something that people haven't really got that much flexibility on.
And I think that's when the other side of the equation comes in, that people need to work to increase their income. There's obviously a floor to how low you can have your spending, and then it turns over to the income side.
Which there is always a way to increase your income, and actually sometimes it's easier to do that, and there are so many ways to do it. To ask for a raise, to work on your skills, to change careers. There are so many ways to increase your income, but sometimes we get stuck in what we're doing, and then we forget that that is even an option.
And just finally, in terms of the investment side of things, I mean, clearly stock markets are pretty high at the moment. There's lots of fears that might not last. It's a difficult thing to advise people to get into all of a sudden if they're not already doing it.
Well, it actually can be surprisingly, interestingly easy. Buying a simple global index fund, you can take your first £100, put it into a SIP or an ISA and just start. And I think lots of people think investing is way more complex than it needs to be. They think they need an IFA, they think they need all these different things, but it can be actually super simple to get your money working for you. And most people have a very long time horizon, because you're not investing until you retire, you're investing until you expire. So you have decades and decades left to get your money working for you.
Katie and Anne, thank you so much for joining us. Been really interesting.
I should say the fact that you're talking to where you're talking to us from, you can see the location there up on the screen. I think probably shows the kind of fruits of your frugality, if that makes sense. Very nice.
Thanks for having us on the show.
Thank you so much for being here.
Now, a new bronze statue of Bridget Jones has been unveiled in Leicester Square, and it's got the seal of approval from Renée Zellweger, luckily, because she is the statue, I guess, and played Bridget Jones in the films.
Quite good, I think, actually.
Yeah. Well, Helen Fielding, who wrote the books, was there for the big reveal as well. She was asked if there could be another chapter for Bridget Jones and said, never say never, so watch this space.
And this is what Renée Zellweger had to say when she was asked about the statue.
It feels very lucky, because to be part of something that would sort of bring on such an occasion is not something that you ever expect as a creative person. It's just not, same way it feels very special.
It's quite a good statue.
Yeah, it's a good one. There's been some... The ones that come to mind was a terrible David Beckham one.
Yeah.
And a terrible Cristiano
Ronaldo one. And also the Millicent Fawcett one was very controversial as well.
I don't think I saw that one.
It was kind of like sexy Millicent Fawcett. I'm not sure it was really the kind of vibes for, you know,
I'm trying to
feminist
find
campaigner.
my notes on this. I had some stats on how much these films grossed at the box office, but I can't find it. But the bottom line, here we go, £756 million.
Wow.
The fourth movie grossed, which was more than the first three. And obviously the fourth one came out earlier this year. The first one was 2001. Then 2004, then 2016.
No wonder she wants to keep going.
I was about to say, I think she should do another one based on that. But I'm not sure if did the latest movie get based on a book, or was it just an extension of the movie franchise?
I've reached my knowledge on this. I have actually, I've watched the first film, but not the others. But I actually loved the books. The books are great if you haven't read them. Back in 1996, created by Helen Fielding.
Well, there we go. And is that a permanent statue? Do we know that? Or is it just temporary? Permanent, probably.
I don't know. I don't know. Not sure. It looks like it's permanent. I don't think they're going to melt it down and sell it for scrap.
No, I know, but maybe it's going to move. Yeah, I mean, fair play. Like, Leicester Square, who picks that? She's obviously a very successful movie character.
Yeah, she's iconic.
British, but like, where's the James Bond one?
Oh, I don't know. Bit of Bridget Jones. Got to be done.
Anyway, that does it for that chat. We've got 40 seconds left to tease ahead to next hour. We'll kick off with more discussion on this latest asylum policy change.
Yeah, we will. It's certainly ruffling feathers here in Westminster. Shabana Mahmood wandering into an almighty row with some of her backbenchers. I do wonder, though, if it is an argument she is prepared for and is frankly willing to have as well.
We're also at 9:30. I'm really looking forward to this. Going to be joined by the actor and campaigner Michael Sheen. Lots to discuss with him, including his campaigning for the Welsh National Theatre. Maybe a cheeky little Frost Nixon question too. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Good morning. It is 9 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilfred, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
The Home Secretary faces a rebellion from her own MPs over her asylum reforms, but she does gain the support from Reform's Nigel Farage.
He's making mischief, so I'm not going to let him live rent-free in my head. And just because he said something doesn't mean to say that I have to respond to it.
Trump's peace plan for Gaza is approved by the United Nations.
The government plans to ban the resale of live event tickets for profit as the competition watchdog names 8 companies it's investigating over online pricing.
Also ahead, finding your way back to work after getting fired. We'll speak to 2 former magazine chiefs about their career revival.
And we're excited about this one. The star of stage and screen, Michael Sheen, will be here to discuss the rescue of Welsh theatre and also bring back to life that infamous Frost-Nixon interview.
A very good morning and welcome to the programme. Well, the Home Secretary is facing backlash from some of her own MPs, having called new asylum reforms cruel and inhumane.
So in a passionate speech in Parliament, Shabana Mahmood laid out some plans to fix what she's called a broken system of asylum. And it was a moment of some pretty raw emotion, anger for the Home Secretary, who recounted the racist abuse she suffered herself. Her announcement was welcomed by the Reform leader, Nigel Farage, to which she had a blunt message. Start off.
Well, we want to show you, though, exactly what happened in the Commons yesterday, because things got fairly heated when the Lib Dem spokesperson accused Shabana Mahmood of stoking division. She then talked about being racially abused and repeated some deeply offensive language. But if you listen to what she said, I think you'll understand why.
I have to say to the honourable gentleman, I wish I had the privilege of walking around this country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and asylum system is creating across this country. Unlike him, unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a and told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country.
She had to apologise for the language, but did also, reiterate the reasons that she decided to use it. And I also asked, when I spoke to him earlier, the head of policy at Reform UK, Zia Youssef, what he made of that moment.
Obviously, that's a horrible thing to happen to anyone, and one sympathises with Shabana Mahmood. I will say this, though, that I take something of exception to the notion that should be the reason why she suddenly appears to have had this Damascene conversion and thinks that now immigration is a really important issue, because what it implies is that racism is at the heart of why immigration is an issue in this country, and that's just simply not the case.
Rob Powell's here with us to discuss all this. My question to top this hour off is it going to pass? And how will they get it across the line, with what makeup of MPs?
Yeah, at the moment, it's hard to tell the size of the rebellion. Some of the voices that we had yesterday sort of going over the top and actually putting on record their concerns, yes, they were some of the, I guess, what you would call kind of usual suspects that you would think would not like this sort of stuff. There were some others, more from the centre of the party, though, people like the chair of the Women and Equalities Committee, who are not the sort of traditional from the left of the party kind of thing. I think you might find that people in seats where they are vulnerable to votes going to the Greens and leaking to the left might start to get a little bit worried about the messaging, even if they are actually understanding of the reasons why it is happening. That said, behind the scenes, those in the Home Office sound pretty confident. They were saying yesterday there's been a lot of engagement with the Parliamentary Labour Party, that actually those with concerns and criticisms, they believe, I think, are fairly limited. And they said those conversations will go on. It's a sort of techie point, but it will be interesting to see. This was a document, like a proposal paper yesterday, and it will be implemented not necessarily through one big bill that can be voted down, but maybe through a range of different changes through secondary legislation and through primary legislation. So some of this is about the choreography of the Commons, right? And it's about whether there's one moment where people can coalesce behind to vote it down. And you get a sense that they're acutely aware of that. So they will try not to let it get to that point.
And also, they've got such a big majority. I mean, we're so used to politicians having these big majorities that it takes quite something to derail it, which is why the welfare thing was so extraordinary, to be honest.
And there might be room for manoeuvre on certain bits of this as well. I mean, when you look at the 20-year wait for getting settled status up from, what, I think it's 5 years now for refugees, it's 8 years in Denmark. Could they compromise a little bit on that? Have they left themselves a little bit of room to kind of go to people with criticisms and say, look, we've listened? I don't know, that's just me sort of spitballing a little bit.
Well, let's see what the Home Secretary had to say last night speaking to Beth.
I'm not really interested in anything that Nigel Farage has to say. I think that there are various individuals who at the moment are seeking to make mischief, and I'm not interested because I really mean it when I say I haven't had anything about other political parties and other politicians in my mind. I have a solemn responsibility as the Home Secretary of this country who can see a broken asylum system. It is my job to fix it. I know people are angry about this broken asylum system, and I know that it is fueling division across our country. So it's my job to put that system to right, to reform it, and to unite our country.
He said you'd be welcome to join reform with these sorts of asylum.
Honestly, Nigel Farage can sod off. I'm not interested in anything he's got to say.
No, but really, you've spoken to me about him before, about how you think some of his policies are dog whistle politics.
Well,
how does it make you feel when he thinks you're aligning with him?
Because he's making mischief, so I'm not going to let him live rent-free in my head. And just because he said something doesn't mean to say that I have to respond to it just because he's making mischief.
Tommy Robinson endorsed your plan.
Well, I'll deal with that in just one moment. But the Reform Party currently has a policy to rip up indefinite leave to remain of those who have been long-term settled in our country. That is immoral, it's deeply shameful, and it is the wrong policy.
What do you think you make, Rob, of what A, Reform, but B, the Conservatives said around this policy? Do you think they're going to back it ultimately or not?
I don't know. Well, I'm looking at a Conservative shadow minister here, so I'm almost thinking you should probably ask Ellen Whately when you interview her in a moment.
She's crept into the room, by the way. If you're wondering who Rob's talking about, Ellen Whately's just kind of sidled in.
Look, I mean, I think that the reform tone that they adopted towards it, I don't think will be welcomed by many in Labour trying to convince, because they will be worried that, look, if Nigel Farage is saying we think this is a good thing, then this is going to put off voters that are wondering whether this is, really Labour policy. As for the Tories, I think the tone from Kemi Badenoch yesterday, I think, was notably kind of constructive and sensible. It was, look, there's stuff in here that's good, and we'll get around the table and work with you on this. I don't think the Home Secretary was very interested in taking up that offer, though. The very final thing I'd say, though, is that one of the big hurdles that I think wasn't really addressed too much yesterday, apart from these threats to countries to say, if you're not going to take back people, then we're going to cut your visas, is that you can set all of this stuff out, but if you haven't got arrangements to actually deport people and send people back to countries, then what's it all for? That was the answer that the Rwanda policy was supposed to give, right? But obviously that got tied up in lots of legal complexities. And I think that is what it comes down to, that even if you get to a point where you say you can't stay in the country, if the person's saying, no, I'm not going to leave, if you haven't got arrangements to send them back to the country, what are you going to do other than put them up in taxpayer-funded accommodation?
Rob, great stuff. Thank you.
Rob's already introduced her, so that's good.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Makes my job easier. Shadow Work and Pension Secretary Helen Whately. He's also given me my first question, which is also very useful, so I'm going to steal that one off Rob too. Is the Conservative Party going to back these reforms?
Kemi Badenoch said yesterday in the chamber that we will support Labour taking steps to control immigration, get the small boats under control. And at last, the government and the Home Secretary specifically is listening. This has just got worse over the last year under them, but at last she's listening, she realises they need to do something about it, and she set out some proposals for doing it. I mean, the fact is, on the one hand, A, she's not going far enough, and B, will they actually be able to deliver this? On the one hand, for instance, because they won't leave the ECHR and they risk getting caught up in lawfare and getting stuck and having some of the challenges that we faced when we were in government, when we were still in the ECHR. We've, of course, said now that we would leave that in order to control our borders. And the other thing is, will Labour backbenchers back this? We already saw that Keir Starmer faced that huge rebellion against his welfare savings attempt and caved in. Will their backbenchers back this? So that's why Kemi said, actually, to make sure that they can try and make some progress, we would support them on this.
So you just to be clear, that means you are going to vote for these changes, right? And
Well,
I know you want to see the details, etc., but effectively it is a yes. You will.
So broadly, no, we will support them on controlling immigration.
So you're going to vote. Are you going to vote for these?
I mean, you're trying to pin me down. We haven't even seen. No, is it going to be one big bit of legislation? Is it going to be this? Is it that? How's it going to work? So I can't sit here now and say however they do it and whatever they put in, we'll vote for it.
I do get
broadly,
that.
We will support them to get some more control.
The reason I'm trying to pin you down, and you're right, is because I'll be honest, I have been in this situation so many times before with politicians of all stripes where they've made the right noises and then they haven't backed it at the end. So I kind of feel a bit of distrust.
Well, I'm trying to go as far as I possibly can. Say, look, no, we will support measures that the Labour Party bring forwards to control immigration, stop the boats,
without actually having seen exactly what
they
they
actually see it, it's like, you know, I can't.
That makes sense. Thank you. That does make sense. I was listening to Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, talking to Beth Rigby there, and I was thinking about you a little bit, because Shabana Mahmood said in response to a question, she said, I'm not going to let Nigel Farage live rent-free in my head. Just because he said something doesn't mean I need to respond. Do you think there's a lesson to the Conservative Party there?
Well, I think if you look at what Kemi's doing, Kemi Badenoch is focused on setting out what we would do instead and our policies. For instance, as we've set out our policy on immigration, how we control the borders.
Do you think Nigel Farage is living rent-free in the Conservative Party's head?
No, I don't think that's true at all. I mean, I actually think Kemi's very focused on what we're here for and what we're doing. Yes, we get asked a lot about reform, and I can talk about reform and how we're different and how I think they're getting that wrong. So, but fundamentally, what we're doing in opposition is setting out what we do instead and hold the government to account. And that, I think, sometimes gets overlooked, that our job is to argue and point out things that they're getting wrong as well.
We've got a speech from Kemi Badenoch today. What were the main messages she wants to get across?
Well, I think if we look ahead to next week's budget, I predict that Rachel Reeves is going to be saying, she's a victim of circumstances, so therefore she's going to have to put up taxes and it's all been so hard for her. The fact is she needs to own the choices that she has made. This government needs to own the decisions that they have made to increase public spending and to put up taxes at the last budget, which has been very damaging for the economy. Two very specific choices, so to speak, that they've made. One was Keir Starmer's decision to cave in on welfare savings, so to fail to make £5 billion of welfare savings that they had planned to make back in the summer. The other is it looks like they're going to lift the two-child benefit cap, again, spending about £3.5 billion. That's about £8.5 billion. It's they're effectively choosing to spend more on welfare, and in order to fund that, we're going to see taxes going up, however she ends up doing it. That is a choice that they're making. Kemi Badenoch is going to say it doesn't need to be that way. There is a different way, the way that we would go about it, which is controlling public spending. We've identified £47 billion of saving cuts, bringing down savings, bringing down the deficit, and then being able to bring down taxes and stimulate growth. That is a better way. Let's back businesses, back people who are doing the right thing, stop punishing people who are doing the right thing.
You pick up on the lifting the two-child benefit cap in particular. Labour said they want to lift it. Reform also, interestingly, say that they were back lifting it as well. And obviously this is welfare spending, but at the same time, it is welfare spending that many, many people have identified as pushing children into poverty because of that cap. It's not the kids' fault, obviously. If you're a family, if you're the third child or the fourth child in a family, it's not your fault, of course, that you were born. Is the Conservative Party at risk of looking like the nasty party?
You have to make choices, and we know that people feel that welfare is out of control. The government.
But the choice is about kids and poverty, isn't it?
On benefits, and of course, God, I don't want to see children being brought up in poverty. But just giving more handouts isn't the answer to that. We've had Labour going on about breakfast clubs, and they say that's bringing thousands of children out of poverty. That's not the answer to the problem of poverty. We know the best thing for improving children's chances is for their families to be in work. Instead, we've got Labour putting up unemployment month after month, and so going in the wrong direction on families and the prospects for children on that. And it's fundamentally wrong to say to hard-working taxpayers who are making difficult choices themselves about whether they can afford to have a family or how many children, now we're going to tax you more so that somebody else gets extra benefits for having more children. That is just not a fair society.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Helen Whately speaking to us there from the Conservative Party. Now, the UN Security Council has voted in favour of President Trump's plan to send an international stabilisation force to Gaza.
The resolution was backed by 13 countries, with Russia and China both abstaining. Well, earlier I spoke to the chief executive of the International Rescue Committee, David Miliband, who said this could be the last chance at a two-state solution.
When I first got into politics in the 90s, you had the Oslo process. There was a genuine sense of momentum about the idea that there could be a Palestinian state living alongside Israel. The facts on the ground have changed so much in the last 30 years. Many people are now saying it'll never be achieved. A lot of people saying this is the last chance. So the fact that this UN Security Council resolution got widespread support, the Arab states supported it, America supported it, Europeans supported it, China and Russia didn't veto it, even though it was a Trump plan. That's important because the reversal would have been really very, very serious.
Well, that was David Miliband's take last hour. Let's get our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons' take. He's live in Jerusalem for us as always. And Adam, again, I guess it's the framing there from Miliband is not, wild optimism that this passed, but certainly delaying pessimism in that regard.
Yeah, and I think probably that's fairly wise. It's a man who's been around the block with this story and knows that it's never wise to be too optimistic. I mean, the two-state solution is so ephemeral. It's something that lots of people want, which others resist enormously. And I suppose that's the pragmatic truth about this, is that in order for this to get through the UN Security Council, there were a number of very influential voices who wanted to have this line in, this look towards a path towards Palestinian statehood and self-determination. But also, here in Israel, you have a prime minister in the shape of Benjamin Netanyahu who is adamantly against this, who says that there will be no Palestinian state and who will do anything to oppose that. And frankly, there aren't really any political opponents who are going to deviate from that in Israel. So it's very hard to see, even if Mr. Netanyahu were to stop being prime minister, that Israel would change that policy course. So Palestinian statehood as an idea is certainly not gone, but it's going to be very, very difficult. I don't think we should pretend that there is a true pathway there at the moment, but maybe there is something. I mean, this resolution is, of course, a whole series of compromises and vague promises, and yet it was passed. And I think that was David Miliband's point, and that is echoed by a lot of people across this region, across the world. Russians didn't veto it, the Chinese didn't, and everyone else supported it. What does it mean in practice? Well, it means a stabilization force can be put in place. We don't know which troops will be in that. We know it won't be Americans, won't be British. It's probably going to be people from this region, but it will be done under the umbrella, certainly of this board of peace, but then reporting to the UN. So it won't be a UN peacekeeping force, but it'll be something in that same ballpark. We know that force will safeguard humanitarian aid, will safeguard the population, but will also try to do something towards disarming Hamas. Well, Hamas has come out against this and has said that it has the legitimate right for resistance. So how exactly an international force will disarm Hamas, we don't know that. Either. We know that right-wingers here in Israel oppose this. They think it's given away too many concessions. But we know in the wider region there are many who are desperate, frankly, for the reconstruction of Gaza, who are desperate for peace, and also who really want to see the start of a Palestinian self-determination and leadership in Gaza. That's going to be another thing that is a hard sell to the Palestinians, is to have this board of peace, chairman Donald Trump, and then led to some extent by Tony Blair. They will want to see Palestinian involvement in that. So it's a simple truth in the Middle East that there is a plan, but there are many questions around it. 'Twas ever thus. But I suppose it's better for many, in the minds of many, that this was passed and that there is a path ahead, that if it had been vetoed, and certainly in the minds of Americans, that would have been a path to a return to fighting.
Adam Parsons, thanks so much.
Now, the US House of Representatives will vote later today on a bill calling for the release of all the Epstein files.
Donald Trump, who was mentioned in several of Jeffrey Epstein's email exchanges, was opposed to releasing them, but yesterday flipped his opinion and is now calling for Republicans to vote in favour of the release.
We have nothing to do with Epstein, the Democrats do. All of his friends were Democrats. Some of the people that we mentioned are being looked at very seriously for their relationship to Jeffrey Epstein, but they were with him all the time. I wasn't at all. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends, all of them. And it's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax. And I don't want to take it away from really the greatness of what the Republican Party has accomplished over the last period of time.
That vote, of course, later today.
And coming up, we've got a major boost for consumers this morning. It's all about ticket pricing. They're going to try and stop the tax, effectively.
She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
I'll start if you like. Our was it on air? Probably was, wasn't it? This is a kind of This is the kind of really exciting chat we have when we don't realise you're in the room. Who's going to start? Who's reading this bit? I'm reading this bit.
So it wasn't even that funny, but I'm so tired that I find it really funny.
Right, in our breaking news, this morning, in a possible boost to consumer rights, several companies are going to be investigated by the Competition and Markets Authority, the body that ensures fair competition for customers. You ready?
Do you know what makes this hard as everyone's laughing about that?
You ready to go, Wilf?
No.
Do you need a moment?
Separately, the government is preparing to ban it's not funny. The resale of tickets for live events above their face value, cracking down on touts. Who are we listening?
There's a big problem with, ticket touts, buying tickets in bulk and then increasing the prices and selling them on to people. This government is committed to ending that. We launched a consultation last year. We've got the results of that coming through, and it's actually my colleagues Peter Kyle and Lisa Nandy, the Business and Culture Secretaries, who will respond on the part of the government. But we are committed to ending the scandal of ticket touts inflating the prices that people pay to go and watch a favourite band or a gig.
That was, of course, Steve Reed speaking to Sophie earlier. Sadia's here now to break this down for us. And so we haven't got this law yet, or the details of it, but over the course of the last 5 hours, it's sort of been confirmed that it's coming.
Yeah, we're expecting an announcement tomorrow from the government. It is long awaited and also long promised. We know that musicians and artists and some sports clubs have complained about this for a long time, about the practice of selling tickets at a certain price and then seeing those same tickets, priced maybe tenfold in some cases on these secondary websites, secondary selling websites. So we expect the government to make this announcement. It was part of their election promise, and they've talked about it, they've had a review, they've had a consultation, and now we're expecting that announcement tomorrow. Essentially what it means is that anyone who is reselling a ticket won't be able to resell it at a price higher than what they paid for at the original box office. For the platforms that exist, like StubHub and Viagogo, they can still charge certain fees, which they have, but also those are going to be limited. You also can't sell more tickets than you could have bought under the rules of the first box office. So if a box office says you can only buy 4 tickets for this concert or gig, you can't sell 5. You can't get from somewhere else. It's going to be really tough to enforce, but also social media companies are now part of this fold as well. So just because Viagogo and StubHub and all of these companies are coming out doesn't mean that social media companies can step in their place.
Briefly, it feels like there's a bit of a move overall to try and help consumers. So, when we're buying and selling stuff to stop us getting ripped off, because there's been a bit of a move by the Competition and Markets Authority as well, right?
Yeah, so the Competition and Markets Authority, which is going to be the one that enforces these rules about the ticket resales. They've also announced today tough action against a few groups and organisations. So they've done a review looking into pricing strategies, into the way that tickets and other things are sold, not just tickets. And they've come up with some guidelines for a lot of the companies that they've looked into, but also they're sending letters out to 100 companies to sort of like as a caution. And in addition to that, they've announced that they're launching investigations into 8 companies. StubHub and Viagogo are among them. And it's all about the way that things are priced. So things like drip pricing, which is when you think you're paying something for something and you start clicking, and then as you go along the transaction process, you end up paying a lot more. But also pressure selling. So those sort of like misleading clocks that come onto a website to try and pressure consumers into selling. So it's all about trying to make a level playing field so that businesses can compete fairly.
Sadia, great stuff. Thank you very much. Sorry about the laughter in the intro. Our apologies for that. After the break, we are going to be talking a little bit about this famous interview.
So what, in a sense, you're saying is that there are certain situations, and the Houston plan, or that part of it was one of them, where the president can decide that it's in the best interest of the nation or something, and do something illegal.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
By definition.
Exactly.
That was, of course, a clip of the actual Frost-Nixon interviews. After this short break, we'll be joined by Michael Sheen, who, of course, played Frost, a.k.a. Dad, to me, and we'll be talking to him a little bit about that, but also about his Welsh National Theatre and very much more. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. Let's get the news this morning, shall we? Because Shabana Mahmood is facing a backbench rebellion over the government's bold new asylum policies. The Home Secretary has warned her fellow Labour MPs to back her reforms, which have been called cruel and inhumane.
US President Donald Trump's plan to send an international stabilization force to Gaza has been approved by a vote of the UN Security Council. The proposal calls for a yet-to-be-established Board of Peace as a transitional authority which President Trump would head.
Reselling tickets for live events for any sort of profit is about to be banned by the government. The decision comes a week after artists like Dua Lipa and Coldplay urged Keir Starmer to protect fans from exploitation. Separately, the UK competition watchdog is launching investigations into 8 companies over online pricing practices.
We do have some live pictures just to bring you quickly relating to that top story. Recent pictures from about half an hour ago. This is Shabana Mahmood arriving in Downing Street for Cabinet. Let's have a quick listen.
Are your asylum reforms pandering to the right? Are they morally justified?
It's going to be interesting to see if everyone around the Cabinet table is united. I imagine they are, and the problems are more further afield within the party. But
yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see.
Now, a Welsh Hollywood actor, Michael Sheen, stepped in to fill the void left when National Theatre Wales shut after its funding was slashed by £1.6 million.
So Michael Sheen funded the opening of the new Welsh National Theatre. It's in Swansea, and also it's actually where he first learned to tread the boards as well. The very first production there is called Our Town, and it's going to debut in January next year.
And we are delighted to welcome Michael into the studio to join us now. Very good morning to you, Michael.
Very good morning to you.
Good. What a wonderful voice he's got as well. and Michael, the Welsh National Theatre is something that means an enormous amount to you.
Yeah, well, it was a fairly tortuous journey for us to have a national theatre in Wales, in the English language. There's a national theatre for theatre in the Welsh language, Theatre Cymru. But for us to get to having a national theatre in Wales, there was a lot of arguments. We love a good old argument in Wales. And so it was finally founded, and in fact, I was part of the very first season in 2011. I did a production called The Passion in Port Talbot, which was this mad thing that took place over 72 hours. And I was in character the whole time and all that. But over the 14 years subsequently, the fate of the National Theatre of Wales ended up having all its funding cut just a couple of years ago. And I found myself rehearsing for Nye, the play Nye, at the National Theatre on the South Bank here with a bunch of Welsh actors, all moaning about the fact that it'd taken so long for us to get a National Theatre, and now it seemed to have gone. To cut a long story short, I ended up sort of arguing for what I thought should happen. And then I thought, well, I can't argue about this if I'm not prepared to step up. So I just sort of filled the gap for now. And but now it's this incredibly exciting thing that's starting to become a reality. We start rehearsals for the very first production in a couple of weeks now in Swansea. And in fact, the great Matthew Rhys is performing a one-man show called Playing Burton, where he plays Richard Burton. Tonight you'll be in Wrexham, and that's to raise funds for the Welsh National Theatre. So it's fantastic to get that sort of support.
And why do you think it's... I mean, it's so obvious in some ways, but it does feel, doesn't it, that like an awful lot of the funding for theatres and stuff like that can be directed to the same old places. Why is it so important for people in Wales to have the kind of investment and to have the kind of opportunity to watch this sort of production?
Yeah, I mean, funding for culture, I think Wales was second to the bottom in Europe. I think Greece was the only country that was below us.
Second to the bottom in Europe?
Yeah. Wow. And so, you know, we've gone through a really difficult time. We're going through a really difficult time in Wales in terms of the arts and culture. A lot of cutbacks, a lot of funding going. So I perversely thought, in fact, we need to go bigger and be more ambitious and more bold. And I'm a sort of great believer in, you know, sticking your money where your mouth is, and people tend to follow. So I thought, well, I'll put the money up front for this, get it going, kickstart it, use my personal career to kind of try and create co-productions and get things going. And then hopefully, once the ball is rolling, you know, someone far more suitable than me will take it over. But for now, it's so important because, you know, we need to be able to tell our our story to ourselves, share our story to ourselves as a culture, talk about where we've come from, why we're where we are, where we could possibly go, and then take that out to the world as well so that people can know what our story is. And it provides a kind of I think, a platform for a national conversation. There are so few platforms for people to come and have shared experiences now, you know. And so being able to come to the theatre and tell stories that have meaning to us and they're entertaining to us as well is really important, I think.
You're obviously a big star of screen as well as stage, but is stage more important than ever because of those the shared aspect?
Yeah, I think it is becoming more important. I think probably, you know, I mean, obviously people are very nervous about what AI is going to do, you know, in all areas, but, you know, particularly in our industry as well. I think a live, interactive experience between humans is going to become more and more of a currency, you know, and I think people are going to really crave that more and more. So I do feel like, I mean, I love performing on stage. There's nothing like being in front of an audience. And, you know, I mean, I got to play your dad in front of an audience and on a screen. And I have to say it was in front of the live audience that it really kind of sparked.
We're going to come to that in a moment. But before we do, I wanted one of your other great successes on stage in recent years, we just showed a picture of it, was playing Nye Bevan. Obviously, we talk a lot of politics here. I mean, were you drawn to that just because it was a great play and obviously it won many awards and was very successful, or is it a passion of yours, the NHS as well? Obviously, Nye Bevan founded the NHS.
Yeah, well, it was a combination. I mean, partly I thought there was so little that had been done about Aneurin Bevan, and you know, which tells its own story about Welsh stories, but also about the NHS. You know, it's a really difficult subject, really complex subject, and I think that had put people off a bit. But I think, you know, my dad passed this year, unfortunately, and but before he did, he came to see the play, and I remember him saying to me, you know, I was just a little boy really when the NHS came in. I can't really remember. And it struck me that there are very few people left alive now who were of an adult age when the NHS came in and so can remember what it was like before. So I think telling this story over the last couple of years is so important to remember, you know. Of course, there are all kinds of arguments about what needs to change in the NHS, but to remember the values that underpinned it and what it could go back to. You know?
Can I say, you know, we've got the budget coming up with, you know, taxes predicted to go up. Would you say that, you know, to fund the NHS, to secure the future of the NHS, taxes perhaps do need to go up a bit?
I think the most important thing is that it can't keep going the way it is. I think the audacity of the vision of not just Bevan. I mean, Bevan was the one who pushed it through and got it on there. But the kind of vision that was behind it, that has to be reconnected with, and it has to adapt. I mean, I said in the play, as Bevan, it has to keep changing. It has to keep changing, and it has to meet the needs, you know, the needs of change because of the NHS. It's been so successful that people live longer, you know, and so the pressures on it are greater. So there's someone has to have that same audacity of vision and that kind of courage and imagination to be able to reinvent what it is, but absolutely connected to the same values that underpinned it originally.
Now, you two obviously know each other, right? Because you played Wilf's dad, famously. And it's incredible. I just want to play you a little bit of Michael's portrayal of Wilf's dad. Let's just watch this.
Understand correctly. Are you really saying that in certain situations, the president can decide whether it's in the best interests of the nation and then do something illegal?
I'm saying that when the president does it, that means it's not illegal.
Fantastic. So I've got so many questions I could ask you about this, Michael. We've met endless times. I don't think I've ever actually quizzed you about it. But was Dad hard to capture as a character, or was it sort of quite a simple character?
Well, I think in some way, I mean, he's obviously, many people have done impersonations of your dad over the years, you know, and because he is a character, you know, there are certain aspects and qualities of him that are quite easy in a way, I suppose, to pick up on. But that is part of the difficulty of it, is that you have to go beyond that, you know, not just do an impersonation, but kind of get through. I mean, I spent over 2 years being your dad. He spent a lot longer. And I've always said that life was far more enjoyable being him than it was being me. And there was just a sort of quality that I hope he felt as well in being him, but I certainly felt it in playing him. Just life was just so much more fun and interesting.
Well, he definitely lived life to the full.
Yeah.
And do you know what? You did a fantastic job doing it. It's not just me that thought that. Dad thought that.
Oh.
And I will say, because I was speaking to Mum and my brother before this, but, you know, to you, to Ron Howard, to Frank Langella, to Peter Morgan, you know, it gave Dad this amazing boost in what turned out to be the twilight of his life. So thank you, because you did a fantastic job.
It was such a privilege to get to not only play him, but to spend a bit of time with him and to meet him as I did over those last few years. And he was just an extraordinary man, and he'd be so proud of you.
Well, that's very sweet of you to say. Well, Michael, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for stopping by. Michael Sheen, legendary Hollywood actor, with us there. We're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about how to keep your job or bounce back from it if you lose it.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
You want to talk business? Meet me in the On-Board Lounge. Flying minutes, fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back. Well, getting let go from a job, getting fired, and then finding your way back to work is a struggle, let's be honest, lots of us are going to have to face throughout our careers. But now a new book is looking to help deal with the challenges, but also the opportunities that can come if you get fired.
Yeah, so a more positive take, I guess, on all of this. Delighted joining us are the journalists Laura Brown and Christina O'Neill. They're the authors of All the Cool Girls Get Fired, How to Let Go of Being Let Go and Come Back on Top. Well, Christina, Laura, thank you both very much for joining us. Very good to see you.
Thanks
I
for
love the
having us.
title.
I love it.
It's such a great title.
Yeah, it's subtle, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We love the title. And Christina, so, as Sophie sort of said in the intro, you guys have both had high-profile moments of your career where you've lost your jobs.
Yeah, we were both fired from editor-in-chief positions at magazines.
But were you immediately as positive as you guys are being? Or there must have been some...
Well...
We didn't dance a jig.
We had each other. Laura was fired about a year and a couple months ahead of me and sort of had come through it positive and was thriving, if I can say. Yes. And so having a fired friend who's sort of further down the road when it happens to you, you know, does give you that little glimmer of hope. But there was so much I didn't know when I was fired. Really basic things, whether or not you need a lawyer, how to sort of structure your exit plan. In the American healthcare system, it's quite complicated.
You lucky chaps, you don't have to deal with that.
Yeah. So this was the book we wish we had.
Yeah.
Talk me through, if you can, getting fired. What actually happened there?
Well, we had slightly different situations. I was the editor-in-chief of InStyle magazine, and myself and my whole team were laid off one day on a Zoom because they were closing down the print.
On Zoom?
On Zoom, it was
if these
so
details,
modern. It was so modern.
It's kind of brutal. It's not even like taking someone out.
It's just like, is this broken? You know, and you're hitting things. But yeah, so we're all laid off on Zoom in 2022. But at the time, I got everybody back on. So we would all get the HR speech, and my boss was like weeping, and it was all that. And that got everybody back on, and it was like, let's get back on this Zoom. And I like to say, like, I love being in England, to say I did my best Churchill.
Yeah.
And was like, look, every bit of knowledge that you've accumulated, all your worth, all your skills, they're still yours. They're still yours. Don't let this firing take this away from you. Don't give the power to your former employer. And that actually became the spine of this book, which is like, the faster that you can own what happened to you, the faster you can move on.
That's so interesting. And I read, Christina, that maybe Laura gave you this piece of advice, but it's sort of don't pretend it didn't happen. Own it.
Own it. I mean, we found that we were very kind of honest and public about what happened to us, and I think that helped overcome the shame pretty quickly. So much of it was in our heads initially, and going out and sort of being public about it and having that opportunity to talk about it meant that what came next, you sort of open yourself up to conversations about, you know, what your next workplace opportunity could look like.
Instagrammed it.
Yeah.
That was where the book title came from. We were like, all the cool girls get fired, here we are.
I love it.
Because there's no indictment on your abilities often these days, especially in the US, there's like a plague of layoffs, right? It's an absolute epidemic. So 99% of the time now, if you lose your job, it's not because you suck at it. It means it's circumstantial.
Do you fear, Laura, for print journalism in your kind of space? Is that an aspect of this, that it's all moving online and that costs jobs? Or
I mean, yes. I mean, you guys know as well, the media is ever changing, ever fragmenting, and I think it's scary in the early years, you know, and especially if you're clinging on to legacy media and legacy corporations. But the exciting part of it, as you also seen, is in the fragmenting, is the ownership from the individual. Could be a Substack, could be YouTube, could be podcasts. There's been so many journalists in the US who say have lost a job at CNN or something else, who've started their own platform. And what you get, again, is ownership of that experience, ownership of your own business, and this sort of fabulous, like, breadth of voices now, individual voices that aren't depending on a giant company.
Can we talk business, right? So if you're watching, and you have been fired, or you might be in an industry where you're worried about getting fired, right, which is an awful lot of industries at the minute, what are the tips? What should people do?
Yeah, well, there are a few insurance policies you can take out on yourself, right? What Laura and I did not do and have learned was like the wrong way around, but you know, we hadn't downloaded a single contact. We certainly weren't flirting or taking meetings, and we hadn't updated our LinkedIn. So those are some things that you can do while you're still in a job to keep yourself fresh.
Just if you're watching Bosses, me and Wilfred have updated our LinkedIns for the show, and it's not because we're looking elsewhere.
I was about to say, I actually
How are your resumes, guys? Are they outdated? Because we didn't have a resume for 10 years.
Suddenly, for the next week, our LinkedIn's going to be like...
Yeah, still here.
But it's good advice, though, right? It's stuff that you should just keep refreshing and keep on top of.
Well, when I was fired, suddenly everyone said, oh, send me your resume. Well, I hadn't done my resume in 10 years.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of information to kind of plug into in a very short amount of time when you're already feeling very vulnerable.
And understanding where your industry's going, and again, not in sort of a fatalistic way, but like being curious and sort of seeing where the puck is moving just gives you power whenever there's change in your business. So you have knowledge and you're armed. And again, it's like oftentimes when you lose your job, you can forget what power you have, and that happens so much with women because it took us so much longer to get here. But the power's always here.
And Christina, what about when it comes to looking for the next job? Are there tips you guys have in the book about, you know, how to make sure you're prepared for job interviews or pitching in the right way?
Yeah,
again, that's something that suddenly people don't do for a decade.
Exactly. So you're a little rusty. So, do sit with your resume and make sure you sort of can own that and own your narrative. But, we recommend if you're given the opportunity to interview for a few positions and there's one you really want, maybe start with the other job interviews first so you get kind of warmed up and prepared.
That's a good idea.
Your dream job last if you can.
So Sophie's like getting tempted by this. We've just started a new show.
I think that's a
but
really
is there
good...
a better show? No, just kidding.
I think that's a really good advice.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say as well is increasingly, and I don't know what you guys think, is when I sort of speak to younger people who I know who are trying to navigate the jobs market, it's a bit of a nightmare at the minute. And I think I don't know if it's because of AI or because of the worsening economy, but it really does feel like people are struggling to even get their finger in the not the finger in the door, the foot in the door for an interview.
Whichever body part gets you in.
So how do you do that? If you're at standings, what do you do?
It comes back to sort of old-fashioned things, and then of course LinkedIn is an incredible tool, but careers in life is not an algorithm. You don't get hired because of a keyword. You get hired because you're a person. So
but the worry is, is that still the case?
Yes.
I worry that people are getting hired on keywords rather than the purpose.
No, because you still have to sit with the person and interview them, right?
But you have to get the interview in the first place, though, right?
Yeah, but always like any business, especially if you've lost a job, there is a colleague, a contact, or someone who will be there for you and reach out. What you've got to put your arm up and say, I need help, because no one's going to grab it if you don't.
That's good advice.
So there's old-fashioned things still work, and your skills don't go away if your job situation changes. Someone will recognise that. Take one meeting, take another one. Use LinkedIn as a tool, but don't depend on it. And just remember, people hire people.
Final question. What are you both doing now? You're writing this book.
Yeah, and we're hoping to start a revolution here, talking about this and getting it out in the open. And, we'll see what comes next.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Christina O'Neill and Laura Brown. And congrats on the book. And it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it does. I think it sounds like a great textbook.
Cool.
Very cool.
Thank you.
I've been eyeing up that don't shout all interviews, to be honest. So.
Thanks,
Now, we've been reporting this morning that we're expecting a cold snap to hit the UK, and the Met Office has been saying that snow is also possible in the north, and we can have a look at some pictures now. Coming in from Hartside in Cumbria, I mean, what a beautiful image that is. Freezing, though.
It's going to be markedly colder, we're told, the Met Office says. You used different language yesterday.
I don't know if I can say it on TV rather than a podcast.
Well, Shabana Mahmood used stronger language, but I agree, we can't. It's
got an awful lot colder this week, isn't it? It's suddenly dropped. Snow expected in Scotland and the northeast as well. If you've got any gorgeous pictures like this, then send them in to us, either on social media or I think there's an email address as well, mornings@sky.uk. We love a weather pic.
And if you want to send the pictures to us on our LinkedIn, we're going to be very active on our LinkedIn in the next couple of days, just to hedge our bets.
Yeah, exactly.
Just in case things go wrong. Just to wrap things up, let's just remind you of the top story of the day, of course, and that's ongoing reaction to the Home Secretary's latest asylum policies that were announced yesterday. Well, today she was seen just arriving in Downing Street about an hour ago.
Are your asylum reforms pandering to the right? Are they morally justified? Morning.
Shabana Mahmood there, walking into Cabinet, the number 10 door just closing behind her. I wonder what reception she'll get in there. Certainly from the backbenchers, it's been pretty mixed. People saying that her policies are inhumane, but my feeling is around the actual Cabinet table, it does feel like there is support for them.
Yeah, and of course, as we've been discussing throughout the show, she really kind of doubled down on trying to explain why she had these views. She wasn't apologetic and making excuses. By the way, quite a big morning to come on the political front. Kemi Badenoch's due to give a speech any moment now, near the top of the next hour. And Nigel Farage, a separate one to come as well, where he'll be setting out some of his economic policies ahead of the budget next week.
Yeah, we're getting an awful lot of chat ahead of that budget next week. We'll be back, of course, at the same time tomorrow, 7 a.m. Up next, of course, you've got Gareth Barlow with the rest of the news today.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you same time tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.